and gentlemen, and welcome to RLAfterShock, the longest running independent podcast for everything that is Rocket League Esports in the European scene. A very tired RLAfterShock as well, since I just got up to record this show. I'm the Eternal J. I'm joined by Digital Bacon, whose alarm, hopefully he didn't sleep through today. My man, are you as energized as I am? Are you in the same sort of mental state? Like, what the fuck's going on with you?
No, I get up at a pretty normal time. I mean, today was a little bit longer because I've been playing the living daylights out of Red Dead Redemption 2. I finally got a hold of that and been playing it, but I still got up at 10 o'clock, Jay, a respectable time, not on call at 12, like midday.
Look, dude, I planned to wake up at 10, but I've been sleeping so little lately that I slept through both my 10 and 10:30 backup alarms, okay? That's how fucking bad it was, okay? I've not been in a good state as of late, so you'll have to excuse me if my talking is not as on point as it would be, or, you know, my analysis is not as as sharp as it usually should be for a show like this. So do bear with for a little bit. Hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a bad show as a result of that, because there's a lot to cover, Bacon, isn't there?
Oh yes, there is. So many teams after the spring series have come out, maybe aired their dirty laundry a little bit too much, and we're getting a waft of that right now, and it's an interesting sense, shall we say.
Yeah, lots of transfers coming out off the back of the Spring Series tournament, which of course we'll be covering in whole, plus all your mailbag questions on the 74th episode of RLAfterShock. Let's start, as we always do, with the news. And we'll start in the ex-Reciprocity camp, or Oxygen Esports as they're now known by. It was confirmed that Genji were going to go ahead and sign them. And this basically is Genji with a new coat of paint. Oxygen Esports are the new look Genji side, and they are... They are picking up the Reciprocity side for realsies this time. They actually competed their first tournament under the Spring Series. For a lot of these, we can go very broad strokes because a lot of them is just reporting the news and signal boosting what's already gone out on the subreddit the last couple of weeks. So we're not exactly with a lot of these cases we can sort of talk in more detail when we get to their Spring Series performances. But for Oxygen Esports, it's a very suspect signing, to say the least. You know?
Well, yeah, we talked about the Team Genji organization beforehand. Same shit, different name. I mean, the rebranding isn't that great. It looks like a very early, 2002 esports team, back in those very early days when it was just a new thing with, StarCraft and all of that. But,
it's
that
curious,
aside,
actually. It's curious, actually, because underneath their name, they have 1773 under their thing, which implies that they were somehow founded in 1773. It was
that's some sort of, revolution or whatever in America. It's super dumb.
Yeah, I know. The American Revolution happened the founding date was 1777 or something. So I don't know. And I think the revolution started in 73.
It's like if their state in New England or something like that, when that was actually revolutionized or whatever, that sort of one. But yeah, it just that inclusion is just very odd there anyway. But that's their marketing, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, we'll go into more detail about Oxygen and their first tournament outing over in the Spring Series. Again, we're going to go broad strokes on a lot of these stories, but I think it's great, obviously, the fact that Fruity and Co have found a new organization, a new salary to take them through the Championship Series going into Season 10. So let's hope that Oxygen stick around for a little bit of time, although, as I was mentioning in the last time we reported on this story, not exactly an organization that you would have expected to enter the Rocket League tournament, and certainly not one of massive caliber that we hoped would come through to enter the Rocket League scene. But again, we'll talk more details about their performance in the Spring Series because that's the only real thing we can discuss at this point. We'll move on to our second point. A handful of awkward announcements coming through this week. We thought that Mognus was going to retire, as he posted a tweet longer saying the past and moving forward, which fortunately was not a retirement post. He actually talked about basically some of the issues that he's been having in Rocket League lately, his mentality and stuff like that, which is fair enough if you want to come out and own that. I mean, you do you if you feel like you can say that stuff publicly. But basically, towards the end of it, the point that we're going to focus on is the fact that he's teaming up with Linus or a lot for the next season because he's probably the player that he's the most comfortable around, as is quoted from his tweet longer, Bacon. Let's start with Mognus on the whole here and ask if any of this tweet longer really contextualizes his performance in the last couple of seasons.
So when you look at he's very upfront and frank. And the problem comes down, and it's a massively long one, that he's no longer on the Singularity roster after the Spring Series. They're like, nah, we think we're better, and this is like one of the reasons, and we said it, why they're probably leaving Godsmiller benched, is because Singularity want to have their cake and eat it at the same time. They know that they've got a team currently right now that is towards the bottom end of the RLCS sort of level, but they're trying to push further than that. And I feel a bit bad for Godsmiller because he's probably left in this sort of limbo state. But yeah, Mognus, after his performance in the Spring Series, didn't really add any benefit to the team. Like, you can use the term, like, he's a bit washed or whatever, like you do. And that's a harsh and very blunt thing. But frankly, it's that case of now, like, especially, and we've been begging for it for ages, Jay, is that the RLRS level needs to become respectable, because Mognus isn't at a level anymore to really play in the RLCS, but the RLRS, he could easily smash it out there, But it's just that point of the mentality is RLRS is just near enough a token appreciation to maybe get scouted for an RLCS team, or if you've got the skills, push through to it. It's not actually taken seriously really by players, or at least players that have already made it to the RLCS, because how many teams that drop on down really strive to go back up? The only one I can think of right now is Triple Trouble, but you can see there's already problems in that camp, just mentality based.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the weekend kind of proved that. Obviously, with Mognus already announcing his new team, having gone days after the Singularity run through the Spring Series. I guess it kind of really speaks volumes as to how good of a move that really was. But excuse me. Let's move on to the pro side of this side of things, because obviously, he's announced that he's teaming with a lot going into the next season, and it's like, well, obviously we only got 2 elements out of a 3-man roster, but just from initial sort of stances, like, how do you feel about the potential that we have in this duo?
I don't like it. I'm going to be like, there's the nostalgia factor, right? And of course, everyone would love that from back in the old Complexity Method days, but no. I think Mognus still has a chance at a career. We've already seen a lot not make it to the RLRS through play-ins, and he's the one that struggled the most getting through. Don't get me wrong. You've got him being able, he could probably still make it on through. We'll have to see with a new team. But let's just say, like, with that team, you've got Calix there, who from this past weekend playing on the Clappers looked good. Maybe he wasn't the strongest player on his team, and we'll get to that later, but it's not down to the teammates he played with. Lot's got to change up his own playstyle, so Mognus going back to him. When I'm there going, I think Mognus could get, quite comfortably into the RLRS, and he's going to a player that couldn't do that himself. It feels like it's a step back. I want Mognus to grow as a player instead of going back to his old crutches. It's like not learning from your mistakes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's like, you consider how he's already teamed with the Mets, with the TSM side, and teamed with Mets and Aris, trying to bring that back, that duo, and how well that went. Like, you can't always going forward does not necessarily require going back in certain cases. And while I appreciate, obviously, that, yeah, I still think that old team had a little bit to work with back in the Complexity side. Like, right now, they're just not fulfilling that potential. I just don't think that it's going to work out for them at the moment. So for Mognus, I don't know what he's going to do with a lot. I'm hoping that it's still for the best, honestly, because obviously Mognus is still a pretty legendary player, all things considered. And I'm glad, again, that he's opted to go for a grind through the rival series, because, like, as you mentioned, the rival series is very devalued by a lot of pro players and by a lot of by a lot of people in general who have competed at that level. Hell, I even say that the audience even doesn't really see rival series as a major competition. So, to see these guys, team up together and still go for another crack at it, I just hope it doesn't result in a retirement after this season if they fail.
And that's what scares me the most, and why I don't want this. I want Mognus to play alongside, let's say, 2 new players, purely because that will be what pushes him to grow, Jay, as a player. That's what's going to make him learn new tactics within the game, new mental side of things, maybe even learn some new mechanics. Whereas going with a lot, it feels like they're just going to fall back into a slump of their old ways. And right now, that is not going to be good enough to push them through in a playing scenario, because let's just be quite frank. When we've seen teams like the Clappers come on through, you've got Magnifico there being able to smash it out of the park as well. There are a lot of good bubble teams right now that are able to push. And we've got this whole, like, we're starting to see a proper generation of Rocket League players come on through. Last season was a little bit odd, I'm going to say, with the plans, purely because you didn't see great combinations. And we put that on the near enough, 3-4 week off season that there was, because teams weren't able to, like, they just had it thrown on them, went, oh shit, we got to make a team, and just all sort of scrambled. But now that there's a bigger amount of time, everyone is going to be prepared for the next RLRS, and so you've got to make the best arm roster you can. So whilst Mognus and a lot are teamed together as say now, I'm hoping by the time that they break apart and have found new rosters, because I honestly can't see this working. If it does, great, but I honestly can't.
Well, plenty of options still available for their thirds, for their necessary components, and whoever the hell needs to be picked up or otherwise for Mognus, and a lot. But talking about sort of like the potential for retirement for these players, obviously if they can't make rival series, well, that's already happened this week as well. And this is part of the reason why I was mostly concerned about the Mognus tweet longer, because prior to that, gReazymeister came out on Twitter and he said, that's it, he's done, he's hanging up the coat, he's retired, it's over. Oh man, like fucking hell. Like I once again, I go back to the conversation that we had after Remco retired. Is that like, look, there's not enough of a basis for these guys to play in Rocket League. You have to be Championship Series or you're fucking nothing. And it's like, mate, like, this guy is a fucking world champion, season 2 world champion, and you're not allowing him. There's no opportunity for him to hold some sort of presence in the in the rival series here. Like, yeah, he didn't do that well on a team. I think the composition of We Dem Girls was very, very, broken in a lot of cases. But at the same time, like, this is a guy that can still bring so much to a roster, and because of the fact that rival series is so harsh with its sort of with its format, and there's no basis to support any teams, especially the fact that he had no salary, it's very easy to go ahead and just say, right, I'm done, and like the basis just isn't there to allow stuff like that, guys like gReazymeister to continue on with his career. So like, it doesn't surprise me at all that this has come to fruition, but it absolutely still brings up the same conversation that we had last time a player announced his retirement.
Yeah, and like the reason why I think this is so glaring for us is just along the lines of, you think back to say Complexity before they fell, gReazy looked good, and that was just last summer. 9 months back, Jay, and this lad was coming out, a top 4 team in a world. Then they had that problem, of course, alongside Flakes. The whole team sort of fell apart completely after that, and it's understandable there. He made the wrong move with his team, of course. I think he picked up 2 great players, and they could have been a great team, but the way they, directed themselves there was wrong. But it just shows that a couple of bad moves can just completely destroy a player's own career. And I'm going to say gReazy giving in, him electing for this to be destroyed. And it's understandable, because I'd imagine this has been a super hard last 9 months for the lad,
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you've got guys like us ragging on him saying, look, you need to change your play style. And it's like, and you know what? I appreciate that we have an impact in that respect. But even so, like, I don't think that his bad performance or, his team's bad performance in the last rival series constitutes enough to go for a retirement, at least in a traditional esports sense, In Rocket League, obviously, that's a very different story. But it's just like, again, I think that if gReazymeister had a basis to work with rather than just getting relegated and have to go for the 128 team bracket all again, then we wouldn't see burnout like this to the point of contemplating retirement. Like we've already seen from so many RLCS teams in the last few weeks saying, look, right, fucking open qualifiers are the worst things in the world. And from gReazymeister's perspective, if he subscribes to that, then why the hell would he go through and try for the play-ins? Like it's just no point, especially if you're on a team that doesn't have any salary. You're you've gone from having several teams having, you know, some of the best salaries in all of Rocket League, you know, world championship winning teams, top 4 teams in the world, and now you're back in the rival series where you're playing for We Dem Girls, hoping and praying that by some measure of luck, someone decides to take a risk on you, which is a good chance they won't in the current economic crisis. We're about to enter a fucking recession, you know, and Greazy's just like, well, there's no hope for me, you know, and it's the same thing with any other aspiring pro. Another J-Walls recently also turned up and was like, I'm also retiring and everything. It's like, this is not a good look for Rocket League, you know, like former world champions, you know, players that still have so much career left in them, like, you know, and they're all just up and going, you know, like it's not quite as bad as Overwatch League, for example, where their best players at this time are leaving, but it's like, guys, there's no basis for any players to continue a career after RLCS. How bad is that for a scene?
Yeah, and like with the Overwatch League, we'll just say that basis is looking like those players are largely looking to different games, aren't they? You know, you've got like the rise of Valorant there and others coming on into the backgrounds where it's more, it feels like they're being pulled by the sway of them wanting to look at new adventures over there. Whereas with Rocket League, there is no competition to Rocket League. There are many times, Jay, that we wish there was competition to Rocket League within the sort of like virtual sports, but not really sports space, because we feel like that would have given Psyonix the push to make it a better game, you know, and develop it there. But for this, where there's nothing, it is all solely upon the ecosystem of one game for these players, and that ecosystem is not strong enough to have it in place. We talked many times before about having, you know, the Rocket Beget Rising Stars ecosystem, or the Superstar League, sorry, as the third tier, and how that would fix it. But when you're second division, which should be your de facto, because remember, RLCS is everything, and yeah, Greasy here last season made $5,000 from 2 months of work. And sorry, that's not him making $5,000. That's his team between 3 of them. What, that works out at 1.6K? That's not a minimum salary. This guy can't focus on Rocket League. He can't make a living off it. So naturally, he's like, it feels like he's got to give it up, because this lad is, you know, past university and that now. He's an adult and isn't a kid like most of the other players around him, where they don't have those responsibilities put in place, you know?
Absolutely, and it's like, you know, with the you know, with the likes of a lot of players, and I guess you could say a lot of teams in Rocket League right now, it doesn't feel like that a career path is viable for a lot of people, you know, in the long term. Like, yeah, you can have it right now, but as you say, past university, it feels like you've got to start stepping up your responsibilities, and it's like, you know, in what other esport is that a case? And you talk about some of the players from Overwatch going to Valorant. Like, I'm seeing so many Rocket League pros, you know, especially those who obviously have gone down the retirement route. I know that Remco has been saying a lot about, you know, teaming with other ex-pros as well, saying, look, I'm playing Valorant a lot. If we see Remco crop up in competitive Valorant esports, I'm just going to say, fucking hell, Psyonix. Like, you know, like, you're losing to a completely different genre, because that's how bad the esports infrastructure is. And no, by the way, Valorant does not even have any esports system. Like, Riot have made it open circuit for the first couple of years, right? And right now is the very early stages where the best we have is fucking community tournaments run by the esports hub, you know? Like, esports hub have not done anything major. I don't think ever, actually. Like, I think they are basically the Call of Duty version of rival esports for all intents and purposes. Like, that's what they fucking are. You know, like that's the stage that Valorant is at right now. So why people are leaving, if I do see people cropping up in the Valorant ecosystem, then I'm going to be really pissed. I don't know how likely that is, but just let that set the tone for exactly, you know, what players will be leaving to if they decide to go to a different esport. And again, if players do decide to go that road, then I don't blame them at all, because like, so Rocket League has nothing underneath the RLCS in realistic terms. So again, I don't blame gReazymeister. It's a shame to see him go, because I still think he had so much more that he could do in the Rocket League space. But that's his decision, and we'll move on from that. So back into roster moves, Mike Boy has been on Twitter saying that him and Rezex have parted ways with Justuszzz on the RJM side. Our boy Juicy asks whether or not they'll be playing Superstar League together. And Mike Boy says that they'll be replacing Justuszzz with Rix Ronde for Superstar League as the stand-in. So let's talk about the move away from Justuszzz here. How do we feel about this? You know, is this the right move for this team? Like, obviously, RJM had a lot of potential going into the season. They didn't quite live up to it, but they stayed in the rival series, if I recall correctly. Hang on, let me verify that real quick. Just going to make sure that I'm not being an absolute dum-dum. I'm clicking on the spring series.
RJM stayed up. They were 5th Just ahead of Triple Trouble. Sorry, I completely blanked out on what you were saying about that.
So RJM, obviously, with Justice out, was that the right move to make for these guys? Is this going to be able to defend their spot in rival series going into next season?
So it's an odd one because Justice and MightBoi have teamed together for the longest time ever, haven't they? You know, back all the way to the MCon days where they had Though. There was a falling out between the players, and of course they split their separate ways. Though's gone on to absolutely smash out of the park, as you know, currently on the Singularity roster. But these two, like, it feels a bit weird seeing that duo split up because, you know, they're both the two Dutch lads that were incredible together. Now for them to split up, I don't have a clue. I will say it feels like he was the weakest player on the team, but that does not mean he's the one you get rid of, because naturally it felt very much like Justice and MightBoi had a good chemistry together. Near enough the opposite reason, the opposite case of Bruta being Rick's Ronde, where they were both locking heads, causing trouble for each other. These two worked off each other really well, and Rizek's gained a lot of strength on this side by being able to work off of those two, knowing that those two are safe on their own. He's just got to think about himself and be very tunnel vision on a lot of solo plays, as well as knowing that both of them are going to be trying to set him up. And similarly, if they're both in attack, it's quite easy for him to know his place in defense. So for them to make this change, there has got to be a good player coming into this spot, because Rick's Ronde, he's a good lad, but I have no clue if this will work. You know, this feels like a very different roster.
I don't know. I have a bit more faith in it than you do, I think. I actually really appreciate Rix and what he was able to do in the Triple Trouble side, because that Triple Trouble lineup by the end of the rival series, like, they looked like they were a really good formation side, and part of that was down to the fact that that Rix Ronde had found his place within the team, and I think if he finds his place within this team, then as well it could work. It could work pretty fondly, I think, for RJM. RJM is it RJR night now? Like, how the fuck do you? Are they going to change their team name now? Because, like, you know, it's kind of the initials of the different teams. That'd be RRM, actually, wouldn't it? Because Justice is the middle player. I don't fucking know. Anyway, bottom line. But bottom line is that actually I kind of think Rix is an upgrade in this respect, because I think that he's actually a bit more of a capable player. And in the case of the Dutch connection, I think that obviously Rix Ronde is there. MightBoi might have a bit more of what's it what am I trying to say?
I have no clue right now what you're trying to say.
Like a heritage link, culture link. There you go, a culture link. So they'll be able to understand each other in a way that doesn't quite fit in with international rosters. And that is a thing, by the way. Like, you know, take a look at some studies. That's legit. So for Rick's Ronde, like, I'm kind of a bit excited to see what he'll do in Superstar League. Obviously, it is only for Superstar League going into season 10. We don't know if he'll actually get officially picked up. But for this side, you know, if they do well in Superstar League and exceed expectations, then I can see an opportunity, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Like, when you look at Superstar League, that's the best they sort of have right now. And it'll be a good basis. We know some teams have dropped on out when you look at, you know, Solari, but there's still a lot of good talent within the Superstar League, and it'll be, a good trial ground for them with very little pressure as well. So they should be able to work on themselves without sort of being thrown into the fire, because it's not a massive prize pool for them there. They're already secure to the RS the next season. So it is the best sort of case, the best place as well for Rix to be able to see if he can fit into his team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, still a lot of questions around the RJM or RRM side now. It's like, fucking, I don't know what we're going to call it.
Go the opposite way. Go MRR, so it's just Mr.
The new team name is Mur. Well, in the camp of Mur, there is still a lot of questions to be answered, and those questions to be answered in the Superstar League when we do come to cover that in next week's episode of RLAfterShock. But for now, let's move on and talk about some other rosters. A roster, in fact, that particularly actually competed in the Spring Series qualifiers. They announced that they were going to trial eekso for the Spring Series, and I don't want to talk about Spring Series performance from these guys just yet. We'll get onto that a little bit later on in the show. But I want to talk about the potential for eekso in this lineup from a theoretical standpoint, and going in as further on into the next season. The rival series, for example, what do we think about this team?
Nope, it's not going to work. Bluey is way too up his own arse in attack, and so eekso has no chance to shine. This was such a poor decision. Tadpole, if you're listening, you just got to allow... If you want Blue on your side, and you've got to, of course, to keep your spot, otherwise you get Rick's back. But you've just got to allow Bluey to just do what he wants. He's going to always want to be the superstar player in attack. Allow. You just got to pick up another midfield player so that you and him can focus on defense and Bluey can ball chase to his heart's desire, the little Jack Russell.
Do you know what? I have to agree. I'm afraid that's just the case. Like, you know, here's the thing, right? You know, I think that there's very rare occasions where I think two strikers can work if you can find the synergy between those strikers. But with the way that Bluey plays, I feel like he tries to take the star role on his lonesome. Like, he tries to steal the spotlight from any other striker that's there. Like, you know, FC Barcelona was just case in point with that whole fucking thing. Like, the way he played in that whole Savage side and the way that he played with FCB. Like, you know, you see what he did there, and it's like, it kind of makes sense that eekso will just get shut out in a lot of cases. And I think that kind of contributed to their performance here in the spring series. And I looked at this and I was like, look, I'm going to hold out an open mind for this, but I'm not too certain that eekso is the answer right here. And certainly, you know, it's exactly for you what you say. You know, it's mostly because of Bluey. It feels like he's like the problem child for every single team, it seems. And I like the idea. Again, you know, eekso is a really good player, but just in the context of this lineup, like I didn't think it works. You know,
and that's not us calling Bluey a bad player at all. He just has a very certain play style, and he does need to change that if he wants to progress, because it is what is holding him back, of course. But if you're a team in the rival series, I honestly believe Tadpole with the right third man can get around that. They can make it work. Don't get me wrong, you'll never be world champions again currently, and that again relies upon Bluey, because naturally Bluey gets demoed, their attacking force is gone, you know, or if anyone else gets demoed, Bluey's not going to go back and save them and get them out of that bind. Most of the time he's way too stuck downfield. So you've got a problem glaring right there, but you can find a third man that I think will be able to get you into the RLCS, and then from there you would hope you've had enough time to fix those issues, you know. And right now, like, you're looking, and a second attacker is not going to work. You've got to have another all-field man so that Tadpole isn't relied solely on that defense. eekso is okay at defense, and he has been trying to move to an all-field player role, but that's not where he's best. He is best more as an aggressive attacking player. So you've got to try and find this new lad to fit into the roster. And right now, I've got no clue who that would be, because I'm just like trying to think in the off season, like, who's still available. But also you want them to go with a new player to bring on up, because I feel like Triple Trouble right now needs to be more inventive rather than falling back on those old crutches of players who they already know.
Yeah, there needs to be a few more answers, and it is kind of difficult with the current state of things. So, you know, I guess that we'll see where Triple Trouble go from here. Again, we'll talk in more details about their Spring Series performance in the later part of the show. For now, though, I want to talk about the AS Monaco side. They're trying out Kash, of all players. I don't know if we mentioned the fact that you know, ASM were opting for you know, a different performance or a different roster in the past, because very recently they announced that that Tigray was off the roster. So they were sort of like, you know, I think they were going to go through a whole process of trialing new players. Kash was touted. Kash was officially registered to the team in the spring series. And again, similar conversation or similar sort of like, you know, approach to this conversation as the Triple Trouble side without diving into the spring series. What do we think of what he could bring to this side?
Good. Kash was great for this team. Again, they needed a more aggressive player. I talked about this before with Ignite falling back. He's less aggressive and now is more focusing on the whole field. And again, I'll contribute this to a confidence issue where he just does not feel that he can deliver solely as the one aggressor, the star striker. Kash, he's got no fear in him, it seems. So he can deliver on that aspect. And you look at how this team played. Like, I wouldn't have expected them to qualify on through. I'm just going to say right now, purely because they're playing with a new lad for their first tournament. But to get near enough into a runners-up spot, That's fantastic. Who did they drop to? Singularity, and then they took down Oxygen, took down Solari, and then got dropped by Canyons. I don't think you could have asked for a better performance, really, from them, and being realistic.
I mean, considering where AS Monaco were at in the championship series this last season, obviously not even getting a single victory on the board. It's like any sort of move into an upgraded player would have been a fucking, a big pickup for them. So to have Kash in and already to start showing up a decent showing, we're looking at a very, very powerful team, and certainly their stance, I think, has a lot of promise behind them. We talked a lot about how the players there didn't really show any sort of good talent. I think that obviously Extra was the best element of AS Monaco, and having Tigray drop out to see Kash coming in with ignite there as well, who I think still has potential behind him, but he just hasn't been unlocked in the last season. I think that there's a lot of potential for this new player to come in and for the AS Monaco side for Kash. It's a great opportunity. I don't blame him for leaving the Notorious Legion or Awkward Turtle side, that's it. I mean, we can kind of segue into that one unless you have anything else you want to say about AS Monaco.
I just want to say that now we're in a weird position because we were expecting Extra to maybe get picked up by one of the RLCS teams, but with this move, he's locked in by all accounts, isn't he?
I mean, you could just do the triple trouble thing and just say fucked up and just leave him. You could do that to ignite, so
And realistically, for an RLCS team, I wouldn't blame Extra for doing that because it's secured salary. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And like we said, realistically, RLRS isn't respected at all because, Sonics doesn't even respect it seems. So if that happens, it happens, and AS Monaco have to go back through the play-ins, but I hope this team sticks together because I could see this team making a run next season and really doing well. But that's because currently, right now, they're the best RLRS teams bar Canyons.
And absolutely, I agree with you. I believe that's certainly the case with AS Monaco. And speaking of Cash's former team, Notorious Legion. And so we're to talk about them. They have dropped their roster officially, which again, we're talking a lot about how it's not really worth it for teams to enter into the rival series, and that I think Notorious Legion found out the hard way from a business standpoint. The team was really good, which kind of does suck to a certain extent because I feel like they were on the precipice of doing some good work. I think that the next season would have been theirs, but Notorious Legion have dropped them, and now they're the Awkward Turtles going into the next season.
So the Notorious Legion drop to me, Jay, just feels more like let's say, the economics of the scene, the whole display of it, and that Notorious Legion had picked them up for the season, picked them up for the 2 months. They didn't have any intention for really carrying that on purely because they needed something for their team to represent them in. And right now, there is nothing there. So why are they, with, RLRS due to start back up in, let's say, September, because generally that's what the schedule is. So you've got June, July, August. Why are they going to pay the salaries of these 3 players for 3 months when they're not going to get anything in return? There's no point.
That's what I'm saying, because there's no competitions that are designed for rival series players. And before we had stuff like DreamHack, for example, where, you could have found an entry point, obviously.
And Notorious Legion, if there was DreamHacks, would have sponsored them further, I reckon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it would have been on a different basis. They would still been playing, but it'd been more a case of the team would have been, probably just paid to fly on out to those DreamHacks and take part in the European ones anyway. And, slightly different basis to make sure that they're still making money, of course, during this time, but they would have still kept the name. With nothing here, there's no point for them to sponsor at all.
No, that's what I 100% agree. If we had more tournaments where people could play and we could see Awkward Turtles enter into Notorious Legion prior to this, enter into some more competitions, and that'd be great. But that just goes to show the state of the scene, the economics right now for Notorious Legion. There is nothing left for them to do. So they're out. Awkward Turtles return to the rival series, obviously with Tigray standing in place of Kash. A bit of a trade between ASM and Awkward Turtles in that respect, but Awkward Turtles, see where they can go from here, and again, see if they can capitalize and build upon the lineup that they had in the last Rival Series season. I did want to ask about that actually, because having lost Kash to the ASM side, have they lost the main crutch of their performance and their team, or is there more to this squad than just their main striker?
So, no, the core of the team is Matei and Tars. It always has been. Those two, a little bit like what we thought Justuszzz and JohnnyBoi were, quite frankly. They are the core. But that third man, they're going to have to be careful who they pick up as their new third man, of course, going forward. If I bring up their results from... Sorry, looking at it now, where they put in Tigre, it weren't great. And Tigre's not the player you want to. And that was quite funny, actually. It was a like for likes. It was literally a swap back and forth, wasn't it? And quite funny as well, that Awkward Turtles took down RGM there. But it's not the right man to pick up, quite frankly. Awkward Turtles, I don't know what you're doing thinking up, to pick up Tigre. You need an aggressive striking player, because that's just naturally what works with this formation. They should have been the ones picking up bloody eekso,
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like if they had the eekso under their belt, I mean, there's still a chance, to be honest, because we haven't confirmed anything with Triple Trouble as of right now. So it'll be curious to see whether or not they'll pick up eekso. And if they do, then I think that might be able to save Notorious Legion or Awkward Turtles in their own respect. So again, there's still a lot of breathing in between now and the next season. So we'll see whether or not that all comes together. For now, we're going to move on to our final news topic. Breaking just yesterday, JohnnyBoi announces the $50,000 FusionRL, or announcing FusionRL, the $50,000 tournament for North American and EU tournaments, combining 3v3, 2v2, and 1v1 Rocket League. It came on Twitter with this fancy 45-second trailer, which I won't lie, kicks the shit out of our website trailer. I'm certainly jealous on that respect, so I'm going to have to get in touch with this Linuxy guy, because that was certainly impressive from him. But Fusion. 50 grand prize money. Look, right. I mean, on the one hand, I am very, very happy that we've got more tournaments here. For NA and EU especially as well, because we've got some other decent opportunities. There's also opportunities for Middle East, South America to qualify. We'll get into the Middle East thing in a minute here. I just wanted to talk about the specifics of the actual tournament itself, because it's very fucking gimmicky, and that's the other side of the thing. Like, I'm really happy we've got tournaments and this kind of money prize pool, but it's like, what the fuck is this format, man? Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, so straight up, good on JohnnyBoi, good on the Sandrock lot, whatever, for putting this on for us. And it's going to be great to see. But yeah, it's so gimmicky and it's so weird. So quite straight up, for the qualifiers, the format for the qualifiers, guys, is a double. So you put your name, you sign up by posting on Twitter, the captain does anyway, what their team is, and then at JohnnyBoi and hashtag FusionRL. Little bit strange of a way, but it's all invited. Qualifiers format, double or limb. Every series will be a best of 5 and the top 8 teams qualify. The series format, though, Game 1, 3v3. Game 2, 2v2. Game 3, 1v1. Game 4, the losing team's choice. Game 5, the other team's choice. What? I mean, this is the sort of thing we've enjoyed for like little shitty $100, just one-off tournaments just for the fun of it. But the problem stems here that this is fucking 25 grand per region. This is the current biggest tournament on, due coming up, and it is ultra gimmicky. What?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this and I was like, oh, great, we've got a new tournament. It's going to sponsor 3v3, 2v2, and 1v1. They'll probably create some different tournaments and separate them and split the prize pool. And that makes sense because it might circumvent Psyonix's fucking, $5,000 cap. And I just looked at this and I was like, what the fuck, And then that's just for the qualifier, by the way. Like, that's all one match, right? They're one best of 5 match where you play one game in 3v3, one game in 2v2, one game in 1v1 at least. I can't fucking believe that, mate. you're basically resting your entire, series potentially on one big fucking, on one big fucking, 1v1 player, and then the actual format for the main tournament is super, super weird because then they separate those things, but then each team has to field a 3v3, a 2v2, and a 1v1 roster. And then sort of like the points add up, and then eventually you get into, is there a playoff placement right here? Like, that part's not explained. It seems like it's just going to be 7 sort of single elimination brackets, and then based on your tournament points in the tournament, you'll get a certain part of the prize pool. I'm just like, what's going on here? Like, it just feels like such a fucking, it feels like someone has come in with a very severe lack of understanding as to how Rocket League Esports works and what makes it appealing, and just said, we'll do all the fucking game modes, and just throw in some weird show match shit, because that's what this feels like to me. Like, it feels like a bunch of show matches in a bracket, and that's not to say the least about who's going to get invited to this tournament, Bacon.
Yeah, and the only reason, guys at home, why we're like ragging on this a little bit comes down to, like Jay said, this feels like not an understanding of why esports work. Like, no ragging on JohnnyBoi, I think he'll make this entertaining, but it is gimmicky. It is show matches, like you said, and the real annoyance comes down to, if there is a place for someone to put down 50 grand like this, which matches, the prize pool of the lower regions in RLCS. Well, not anymore as of this current season, but it just comes down to, why is there nothing higher above this? If this is our gimmicky stuff that most people wouldn't even consider within the esports systems as a minor, this is currently being looked at, Jay, quite frankly, as a major with 50 grand, prize pool wise. It's not going to go down as it will go down as a minor. But what is going on above this? And it's going to be interesting to see going forward, because this would have had to be agreed by Psyonix. So I don't know. That gives me a little bit of hope that there is bigger stuff down the line. But as of right now, this is the only big tournament there is. There is nothing more. And I'm looking at the prize pool distribution and that, and I don't know. Do we think the big teams are going to be asked to play in this? Like, with all the, 1v1s, 2v2s, and 3v3s? I can imagine Vitality, because those lads love 2v2s and 1v1s. But, like, the other teams around, let's say Dig and that, do you think they could be asked to play for, like, numerous brackets where the prize money isn't actually that good because you're having to play tons of times across the week, in like multiple brackets, to be able to get, say, where they spread it out a little bit, to maybe get like 6 grand from 3 nights of work? I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, right? I think they will, exclusively because this is the biggest thing we've got on the horizon. There's nothing else that we've got announced. Like, Psyonix has said, we're going to do something, we're going to do something, we're going to do something, we're going to bring an announcement, we're going to send newsletters out to fucking teams. And it's like, well, where are these resources? Like, even if you only sent out teams, like, team owners of fucking, the information, like, that shit would have gotten leaked. Like, trust me, we'd know by now, because, we would fucking know if there's anything up on the horizon. And there's not. There's fucking tight-lipped beyond belief. And just considering exactly like everything around this, not just the format, but also the way that teams are going to get invited. Basically, you've got to tweet to JohnnyBoi, your fucking team, and if he thinks you're good enough, he'll just send you into the qualifier. It's like, what system is this? Like what kind of qualifier system is this? That this is so dumb. Again, it feels like such a show match. Like, it feels like a fucking glorified show match for every single match that you'll see played out over the course of this one. And I just don't know what this contributes to the Rocket League space. Like, I don't think I'm going to, qualify this in my team rankings. I'm not going to. I don't think I'd include this tournament in my year overview. Like, there's just this whole thing makes no fucking sense. And then again, talking about JohnnyBoi tournaments, like, someone's got a real hard on for giving him a shit ton of money, and that guy is in Civic again. Okay, look, I said it in TEI. I'm going to say it here again. It's a conflict of interest to have this guy sponsoring tournaments. Because guess what other regions are going to get included in the European side? Middle East. Who's the biggest Middle Eastern team? The one that Civic so happens to own. Guys, that's a conflict of interest right here. It's so massive. I can't believe no one's fucking like calling this out. Like, guys, right? You realize how fucking skewed these results will now be, and you realize how untrustworthy this is as a result, you know? Like, I realize that, yeah, the likelihood of Civic actually doing something to fix results in the favor of Sandrock is very, very low, but the fact that that's even a possibility is the issue here. Like, and the fact that also this is also $50,000, the prize pool overall is so massive, Cyrix are letting it slide. They're letting it slide from the same organization that wanted to that did not want Mockit to have several different teams and wanted to try and stamp out conflict of interest with multi-team ownership. Like, guys, this is the biggest multi-team. This is the biggest conflict of interest you could find. You know, a tournament organizer, a tournament sponsor, the main guy funding the tournament, fielding his team in the tournament as well. Like, that's just not on. That just can't be on here.
Absolutely bonkers right now. But with that, good luck, JohnnyBoi. Like I said, I'm sure it'll be entertaining.
John, man, listen, okay, like, you can do better than this. Like, you can do fucking better than this, mate. Like, you know, you don't, why the hell do you have to compromise with this shit format? Why the hell have you got to do this gimmicky crap? Like, you could run such a brilliant tournament. You've already done it with TEI, you know? You've already done it with TEI. Why can't you find some legitimate sponsors, you know? More importantly, why does Cyrix have such a big thing with letting individuals create tournaments? Like, there was a subpar but in HD podcast where Johnny came on and they were talking about how sponsors are so difficult to vet. What's difficult to vet about a sponsor? You're talking about like fucking big brands like Omen trying to enter the space, you know, the title sponsors of the Overwatch League, created some of the most innovative CSGO broadcasts in the world. What you got to vet about that? Let them run their fucking tournaments. You already cancelled those in the past. Meanwhile, Mr. Middle East right here, we don't know who he is. We don't know what he's done. He's fielding his own team in his own tournaments. Like, you're not going to vet that, are you, Psyonix? Like, what the fuck is this? No one's saying anything about this shit. No one's saying a fucking word about these tournaments. And look, John, you can do better. You can do so much better if you want. I realize how hard it is to get sponsors in this fucking industry, and especially in the Rocket League space, but come the fuck on, man. Come on. You're really going to compromise, potentially destroy competitive integrity for the sake of a tournament. Like, you make enough money from just streaming as it stands, you know? I know you want to do something good. This is not good, though. This is not good for anyone except for Civic, probably.
Well, even then, I don't know what Civic is doing coming on in. Like, what has he got to gain from this? It's so odd to me. Because there is no future case where Samrock get into, well, they're definitely into, like, Middle East isn't going to get its own region within the RLCS. Is he trying to push for the Middle East to be able to get a qualification spot so that they can play in the qualifiers in the play-ins? But then that's a fucking risky thing. And even then, the money from RLRS is definitely not worth it. So it makes near enough no sense to me. That's why you've got to look and go, what is there to be played and made at here? That's the thing,
right? That's the reason why I just want them to create a CIS and an MEA fucking RLCS. So we can just say, right, there you go. There's your fucking league. Play it. You get your spot in the RLCS. There you go. Like, you know, now we'll see what you can really do. Because that way we wouldn't have to deal with shit like this, okay? Like, you know, I want this expansion to happen just so we can get everyone to shut the fuck up. Because already the Sandrock fans, the driveling idiots of the Reddit have come out in full force. We haven't even seen the fucking announcement come through. And they were commenting on Yen's post. I don't know if you saw that, Bacon, right? It was like Jens created an article for GG Recon. Jens is one of our staff writers at RLAfterShock. He created an article for GG Recon, posted it on the subreddit saying, you know, why are French such a dominant region? It's a good article, actually. It was pretty impressively read. You should go check it out. You know, and Jens has got articles coming up for us very soon. So, you know, a lot of opportunities available for him. And it's like, you see this article come out and it's like, oh, hey, you know, like it's actually an interesting little in-depth look into the French Rocket League scene and the fucking people with the Sandrock flares, they're absolute, again, driveling idiots. Just like, French is so good because MEA is not allowed. Fuck off. Fuck off, you actual fucking cretins. And it's going to get worse because, you know, with a tournament like this, you know, that we're going to get some relatively low level of competition getting into this one because not everyone's going to be interested in running this kind of tournament. And Sandrock somehow, somewhere are going to go far because, let's be real here, teams will not give a shit. I'm sorry, it's actually a thing. It is legitimately a thing, right? No matter what you say about that being an excuse, it's a fucking thing, right? Teams are not going to give a shit. They are going to put their effort behind this absolute drivel of a fucking format. and Samrock are going to go far, and everyone's going to be like, oh, Samrock are the best team in the world. I'm like, oh, fuck me.
Well, when the prize money is and for them doing good, their prize money is less than what they're making just from a monthly salary. Do you expect them to put full effort in?
That's the thing. The prize pool breakdown. First place on overall standings is $4,500. That's worse than the prize pool split in a spring series, for fuck's sake. You know, like you can earn more. Mm-hmm. For first place, you can earn more by coming in. Where did fucking what was the prize pool for the rival series? Hold on, let me check this real quick because I'm pretty sure like you can earn more.
If you came 7th, you would have got more. You would have got 5
more than the first place overall standings by coming 7th place in the rival series. You know, everyone's looking at this $25,000 like, and it's clearly a headline grabber because that's the whole point of it. Why would they say anything about first place gets $4,500 out of a $25,000 prize pool? And it's like, you know, like what's going to grab more headlines, former or latter? Of course, it's going to be the latter.
Again, that's the overall rankings. Don't get me wrong. For each bracket, you can get like I think first place is $1,500, but it's like trying to add it all up. So realistically, let's just say you win 2 brackets, get first overall. So that's what you've made $7,500. Like, yeah, that's good, but that's still
lower than top 4 in rival series.
Yeah, and again, still a lot like that. That's basically RLCS salary for a month. Like, that's not really anything for these guys to worry about overall. They're not going to put this main focus because they've got the main job to work on, and that is keeping scrimming for the RLCS. They're not going to be bothered about the 2v2s and 1v1s. That's again why we get annoyed by it. It should have just been full on focus on the esports 3v3 and keep that at that.
Yeah.
You know?
Here's the thing. If this tournament was a 3v3 only competition, I wouldn't be saying nearly as much bad shit as it was. I still would have brought up the incivic and conflict of interest thing. But fucking hell, guys. Like, you know, like, what is this? Like, everyone has been singing praises around here, and it's like, guys, am I the only one who's seeing what's clearly wrong with this? Not just from a scene and political standpoint here, but how terrible this tournament is. It's listed on Wikipedia as a fucking major. This is a major? Like, what? Oh, my God. Like, what? Honestly, I'm on the verge of checking the fuck out of this scene. I swear to God. Valorant's calling. I need to answer, man. I swear to God, this is just so stupid. And again, like, John, why? Why? You're a community leader. Lead us. Lead us somewhere decent. What is with this shit? Anyway, that's the Fusion tournament for Europe and for North America, obviously. So there you go. Make of it as you will. Yeah, that's the news for this week. Let's move on to our mailbag segment. Of course, you can contribute into the show by sending us a mailbag question via the Discord link that is in the show notes and video description of every single episode of the podcast. Go and follow it. Join our community, our ever-growing and bustling community of European esports fans in Rocket League. And, of course, join that mailbag channel where you can send us a question, and chances are we'll answer it live on an episode of RLAfterShock. Our first one comes in from Chewie. This is sent in the middle of the European qualifiers for last week. We also got a bit of a build-up for mailbag because obviously we skipped last week's episode because I had a banging headache. So, you know, kind of combined all that shit into this, roll it into this one episode. And Chewie asked us, not even done with qualifiers and a lot of upsets. So what are your thoughts on the open qualifier system that pros have been complaining about? Obviously, this comes in the wake of several different teams and organizations from North America and Europe especially complaining about the open qualifier system. And I think the open qualifier is a necessary evil in the esports space. And the reason why I say that is because I think we need an open circuit in order, or some level of open circuit, even in like a franchised and closed off system, to allow the growth of new players. And you need to treat those new players like they could be the next big thing. So I think open qualifiers are necessary. I think that you need to I think you need to offset the issues with the open qualifiers and how unpredictable and volatile they can be by making them a part of a wider system. Like, for example, if I take a look at the CS:GO majors, for instance, like, you know, you obviously have the open qualifiers that go into the closed qualifiers, that go into the minors, that go into the major. You know, like that's like 4 steps, with the open qualifier being the very start of it. And there are like several different open qualifiers that feed into the closed, and so on and so forth. And that often is the way that we do things for general in Counter-Strike. And seeing how, you know, how that works, obviously, is the main thing, I feel like, for open qualifiers in Rocket League. And if they were to do that, then sure. I think that the Spring Series format, as a result, was very skewed because it went straight from open qualifier into top 8 bracket, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And you would have liked to see a second sort of like round of things, but you look at this and go, I couldn't have really seen anything happen differently for the Spring Series qualifiers, just because you're talking such a small time span. It's purely looking for 4 spots for a single tournament. I think it's just the pros getting a little bit more upset that they've got to go through the same run as everyone else. But that's the thing. It's open. It's meant to be that way inclined because anyone can get there. If you had made it so much easier for the pros, then you wouldn't have seen stuff like, the clappers come on through, or dare I say it, Veloce getting knocked straight on out right in the early days. That's on Veloce. They've got to go away and bloody realize what they're doing wrong. And the same for Oxygen, really. So it comes down, I think, to just pros wanting a little bit of, I don't know, favoritism. That's how it's feeling these days, you know. And in the past, it feels like when you look at, say, the DreamHack qualifiers, Jay, where they have their opens and then go straight into the closed, and the pro teams, the top, RLCS and some RLRS, if spots are left over, get that free pass into the second day. No, I'm all for those pros having to slog it out like everyone else, because that's just the nature of the tournament.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? I didn't see these complaints back during DreamHack. You remember the DreamHack qualifiers and the way that those worked, and they had all the big sort of like name teams coming invited to the closed qualifiers by default, and then obviously they had the top 4 teams from the world invited to the LAN event, and then the respective teams below that invited to the closed qualifiers, with the open qualifiers being specifically reserved for the bubble scene and the lower levels. I think in that respect it works pretty well, because I feel like that's sort of like it's appropriate. If you've already had great success in XYZ tournaments, then you deserve a little bit of a leg up in another tournament. But it depends really on how the tournament needs to be run. I feel like if you wanted to have exclusively open circuit or an exclusively open tournament like they wanted to have with Spring Series, I think it's kind of understandable. Again, for me personally, I would have inserted another position there with a closed qualifier, because I think those qualifiers were spread out on 2 days anyway. So if you just played the open qualifiers in and just took those next few teams to bring in against the likes of the big squads, and then qualified those into the final 18 bracket, then I could see that working pretty well. But I do also think that it is part of player entitlement and a part of the reason why we don't see players continue to try and qualify through like rival series, because you look at the attitudes that they put on display here for the Spring Series, and it's like, well, why does anyone want to play the big 128 team play-in? Like, nobody does want to play the 128 team play-in. Which again, I think that that they have their flaws, but I think that open qualifiers are a necessary evil in a lot of cases. I just think they need to be implemented a bit better in order to mitigate some of the issues that we have.
And realistically, with like tournaments like this, I could even seen, maybe different changes everywhere within the format. Let's take Spring Series. Instead of being top 8, let's make it a top 12 double or limb, with the teams that got those spots like getting a bye in the first round to allow more teams to come on through. There's so many different ways you can format tournaments, and generally you're always going to get someone complaining because that's the way of the world. But here, for me, if you were to do a day 2 with the RLCS teams and the RLRS teams getting a bye through, it would destroy the tournament, like the competitive integrity, where it should be a case of anyone can make it on through and anyone can play. You've got to really fight at your best. And I mean, you saw some teams that were the pro teams not fighting at the best, and they paid the price.
Yeah, and I think that, again, with the way that obviously these open qualifiers work and how easily you can get burnt out by the end of it, I understand, again, the frustrations, because I think that there were some teams that kind of got burnt in the lower bracket. They didn't quite make it as far as they really should have done, and I certainly believe that those teams should have had another opportunity. But, with the nature of open qualifiers, again, that is the belly of the beast, and they are a necessary evil. So, I don't think we should get rid of closed qualifiers.
Well, it's the point. I don't think they're evil. I like them.
No,
for
absolutely.
this case.
I
the
love
RLRS,
them,
like we're saying, no, that's wrong. Don't do that there. But when it's a one-off tournament like this, I enjoy it because it really has to make everyone play at their top. And that is where the bubble scene can really come on through and cause upsets, which is phenomenal for those players.
Absolutely, and I support the open qualifier system. Call me controversial, give me shit for it, whatever. I don't care.
Well, no, we're not being controversial. We're saying there's a time and a place for everything.
But that's the thing. If a pro player says something, then suddenly it becomes fucking the word of the Lord. So let's just pretend it's controversial for the sake of increasing our clout. There you go. Thanks, Chewie, for your question. That is the bottom line of it. Of course, if you do have any thoughts about the open qualifier system, and again, go ahead and join that Discord or tweet us at RLAfterShock on Twitter and let us know what your thoughts are. Jens, the man whose Twitter thread's getting raided by Sandrock fans, has come into the fold and asked us a good question, actually, about casting. We love casting questions. Of course we do. We all know that Battle Royale games are terrible to cast. I mean... we'll get onto that in a second, actually. But how does Rocket League compare to other esports? What's harder to cast, Rocket League or CS:GO, and what's more fun? I guess this is more of a me-gamed question, but let me spice this up into the mix, because actually, I used to cast PUBG. So you talk about how Battle Royale games are terrible to cast. How about I insert my 2 cents in and make this a 3-way triple threat between Rocket League and CS:GO?
I mean, I can add in stuff like, more sport-based ones like sim racing.
That's the thing, right? Because you do sim racing. Because you do sim racing, right? And actually, to be honest, if I'm taking a look at how you cast a Battle Royale, I'm actually equating it a lot to motorsports, to be honest. Like, imagine casting F1, for example. You can't catch all the action. It's not feasibly possible to catch all the action in one on one stream. So, you've got to pick and choose your battles and try, figure out which sort of storyline you're going to build into, which is the most interesting sort of, battle or fight to watch. So in that respect, it's a bit of a combination of synergy between the casting team and the observation teams. You can't catch everything, obviously, but if you have a list of storylines and a list of sort of teams to watch out for going into the cast, then you and the observation team can keep your eyes on what's going to be the most interesting sort of thing. It comes down to mechanics as well, because the observers need to know a lot more about it. And for a battle royale game, it's not the same sort of thing as a team versus team style of cast. But if you treat it more like a sim race or a motorsport style of casting, then you actually can go quite far with how well you can do in battle royale games.
Again, it largely comes down to, with battle royales and sim racing, the observing of it. With battle royales, you've always got a map going on in the background. You can pull the API, and then you can actually see where the teams are closing on into each other, so you're ready to start building that up, and that's how you're getting an eye at what's going on elsewhere. Sim racing, you constantly got the space between two drivers, the time. That once it's closed down to, let's say, 2 seconds, there's going to be an attack coming up, so when to cut and shift over to there. Otherwise, most of the time, which is standard practice, is just to follow, say, the leader, because you're given time to leader. Most of the time, they're not doing anything interesting. So that's where you're filler, and that's where you have your conversation. Same with conversation in PUBG. That's when you start talking about the teams and where they've gone, and that is your filler for those games. Whereas the play-by-play takes only place when there is actual action going on. Otherwise, it is all color, isn't it?
Absolutely, and in that respect, I kind of had to adapt my style a little bit, because especially in PUBG, for the first 15 to 20 minutes, it's all the setup phase for that game. So you're talking a lot about, again, as I mentioned, storylines and teams and their placements in the overall leagues themselves, and talking about, oh, hey, well, they've got this opens up potential in this area of the map, or, right now they've got center hold, so unless a hard shift comes in, then, you're going to have, a pretty decent dominion over the map, for example, or this, that, and the other. So, you've got in battle royale, you've got to just approach it very, very differently, and then it's not actually as terrible to cast as you might actually think. Comparing to Rocket League, or how does Rocket League compare to other esports? I'd say it's relatively similar. The main difference in terms of casting between that and CS:GO is pacing, because in CS:GO you have very specific stop gaps. You have action, freeze time, setup, action, freeze time, setup. It always goes like that in terms of the structure of each and every single round. Maybe not everything is as even as you come. Maybe not everything is as even as you would expect. You don't always have the same amount of freeze time, the same amount of setup, and the same amount of action. Sometimes the action can just be longer, or the freeze or the setup time could be a little bit shorter. That's just kind of the way of how CS:GO works and the way that the rounds are structured. But you always have that same 3 period of time, and you have lulls in the action where you can sort of throw back over to your color commentator. He'll do a bit of analysis, and you come back in with the play-by-play. It's very different in that respect, because in Rocket League it's just all action. So you just need to find positions where it's okay, well, I don't think anything's going to happen here, so I'll leave it over to Bacon for him to do his pick up. and then when he throws back to me, this will be a chance for me to do some play-by-play and talk about, you know, what's going on in the grand scale of the matchup, and in, you know, the current attack or defense that's going on, you know.
Yeah. So yeah. Essentially, that it's all about with Rocket League. I guess it's harder from the outset, but it's just basically knowing the pacing, knowing when to expect the goal coming up, being able to have a glance at the play that's currently going on and go, that's not going to end up in a goal. That's just not going to happen. That's why with every broadcast you see, every caster suddenly go, well, all right then, that turned into a goal because it was a massive whiff. You don't account for whiffs, you know? So
well, you can't account for whiffs because how often do they happen, you know? You do need a lot of game knowledge, I feel like, in order to really understand when to throw over, because if you throw over in the middle of an attack, then that's kind of fucks it up, and it fucks up the entire play as a result.
Which so is, I can definitely say when casting with casters that are newer to it, and I'll be doing play-by-play, for example, and I'll throw over just when I can, like, naturally, just because of habit, I know this attack isn't going to work out. Even though they're in the middle attack, it can throw off color casters sometimes, Jay, you know, where you're just there going, I guess that's my bad because you weren't expecting it, but that's part of like what makes a flow. Because if a color caster can get that opportunity to cast over an attack and explain in time why that attack's not working, I think that is such a great bit of insight for Rocket League.
Yeah, and you know, that's the reason why we approach casting in the way that we do. To ask which is more difficult, I'd say Rocket League, just because of that little bit extra that you have to account for. There's not that defined structure that you have in CS:GO. That being said, though, I came from CS:GO into Rocket League casting, so the adaptation for me was a little bit harder than someone who was endemic to casting Rocket League in the first place. What's more fun? I mean, I'd find them about as good as each other, honestly. You know, I feel like. For me, I feel like both esports bring their own value in terms of like a casting perspective. You know, like a lot of the time I will go for long stretches of doing one particular game, and then I'll go into the other game and feel refreshed for it. So it breaks up the tedium and I get burnt out a lot less. You know, like very recently, obviously, I was doing a shit ton of CS:GO, obviously just day in and day out doing Road to Rio for about 2.5 weeks straight, and that was great, obviously, because obviously, you know, I wasn't doing any Rocket League at the time, and I was just kind of like, you know, just grinding out CS:GO. For a very big audience. But by the end of that, I'm so fucking tired of seeing M4s and AKs. You know, I'm just like so tired of hearing those fucking sound effects. Yeah, no, that's literally what it was. And then just jumping from that into TCS, like after that was all done, it was so fucking refreshing. You know, it was such a big break and such an opportunity just to be like, look, right, let's calm it down and go into something a bit more different. So, you know, in case of which is more fun, it depends. You know, it's all down to
it's not the game. It's the individual series that you look at or whatever.
No, not even that, honestly. You know, like even transitioning from like top tier CS:GO to Swiss tier, you know, Rocket League, like it doesn't, you know, the series itself never really mattered. Like, yeah, that hasn't a factor into it, but like just based on my mood and how much of one esport I've been doing or the other, you know, like, it just depends. The worst parts for me is when I'm doing both at the same time. So I'm doing like CS:GO for like, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm doing Rocket League on Mondays and Thursdays, and it's like, oh fuck, here we go. You know, that's when the real shit gets kicked up for me. So, you know, I think just like, you know, having a mix of the two and like, you know, breaking it up with the other one is what makes them both just about as equally fun as each other. And again, I like using them as stopgaps to try and keep my sanity in check, because it is very easy to get burnt out down here when you're doing so much of the esports casting thing, you know?
Yeah, and that's why like I'm done sim racing for a fair few weeks now, and I really want to get back into it, but the landscape at the moment is just so odd with the coronavirus stuff going on, because of course the big shit has just suddenly happened. Like sim racing has just moved right on into the spotlight of everything, because of course it's the easiest one to gain such a commercial market from people that aren't into esports. So it's there just going, I'm just annoyed I couldn't get onto them. Like just got closed out by more like actual official real life racing commentators taking on over. So it's an interesting area, but yeah, you do get burnt out from just casting one game. Like being able to cast multiple games is a massive help being a commentator, and naturally as well, it broadens your availability for work, which is so crucial.
You know, like I said, Valorant's calling me. I'm not just kidding about that. I'm not just saying that as a joke. Like, legitimately, I'm probably going to be casting Valorant at the end of the week. So, you know, let that sink in. Anyways, thank you for your question, Jens. We appreciate it as always. We've got a double header from Velixo. We'll break this down between each of the two different questions for a start. I've slowly but surely been seeing more and more hype around Joreuz. Who is he? Where did he come from? And what does he bring to the table for a team? This is definitely a you question, Bacon. So take it away.
So Joreuz, I always say Joreuz because that's how I look at that name.
To be fair, though, in the middle of Spring Series, they were just like, I've heard it casted several different ways from Joreuz himself, so I'm just going to say whatever the fuck I feel like. And it's like, you know what? I can get down with that, okay?
Well, we even know that on the Servette Geneva player, Safair. It's Safair. We, being within European scene, have made that his name. It's actually Safari. Like, straight up.
No, actually, it's the other way around, actually. His name is actually Zafair, and he said it is Zafair, but the Swiss scene said it's Safari. I remember he came out on stage one time at TCS finals, and the host asked him, he was like, so how do you actually say your name? And he's like, well, actually, it's Zafair. And I'm just like, looking over at the analyst desk, like, fuck you all. We got it right. Up yours. It's great.
That's the only problem with, like, European casting, because I'll give it to the Americans. They're always, you know, they've got to be either edgy with something like killer in their name, or it's something really bog standard and simple, you know, like, let's just go Jake or, you know, whatever. Justin, super easy. You can't get that wrong. European names are a little bit harder because multiple different languages. But anyway, with Joreuz here, he's been busting his ass off in the different leagues. Let's just put out, you know, Superstar League and all of that. The Rising Stars come... you know, it's the big example recently. Really promote himself on that, on the weekly scene with, say, Nice Cactuses and all of that. So it's finally getting to the point as well with Six Mans to see him getting the recognition he needs to maybe start making these pushes on through. And the interesting one here, Jay, for us anyway, was going alongside another lad who's got a very similar story in Archie. Don't get me wrong, they got teamed up with Calix, who, you know, has already been in the RLRS, but again, Calix would have seen what they were doing there, involved heavily within Six Mans, and so decided to team with them. They teamed together as the Clappers. And you can see Joreuz is that new, exciting, up-and-coming talent, very akin, I would say, to players like Astral, where he is very mechanically gifted, and the way he makes decisions is incredible. Being able to double down when many people would just call that ball chasing, he's doing it, but for a very good reason, because he knows he's going to be able to contest and fight for that instead of just keeping pressure going. If he doesn't think he's going to get it, he will back off. And he knows how good he is, like, mechanically wise, because notice how often he will double down on that and get it, which is crazy when you look at that. And naturally as well, the way he controls his car by doubling down on those, he knows if he's not going to, let's say, win it out completely and keep on himself, he knows how to position himself for the 50-50 to set up a teammate. And you can see naturally he's calling that out, that he wants a teammate down center. Maybe he's not the best communicative player in the world, but he's able to communicate what he wants, not what he wants from his teammates, which is halfway there. He's still got to work on the mental aspect of the game. Like, definitely his rotations back into defense can be a little bit wonky at times, but as an all-out attacker, this lad is scary. Like I said, I'll liken him to Astral right now and think realistically he is nearly on par. He just needs a little bit more experience.
Yeah, and I think he gained a lot of invaluable experience at the Spring Series as well with the Clappers and their performances. I still remember his first outing on record, I think, was actually DreamHack Montreal in the Open qualifiers, which he didn't go very far in, obviously, you know, just jumping that far. But after that, he gained a lot of recognition. Like, he's been in JohnnyBoi show matches like a lot of the times before, you know, and taking victories above the likes of Snowy, for example, and beating your boy Ahmed, all you fucking Sandrock fans. You know, that was a fucking matchup, wasn't it? Talk about how great they are. Meanwhile, you're losing to this bubble scene shitter. Yeah. Anyway.
Calm down.
Sorry, mate. I'm sorry. Like I'm just getting myself fucking warmed up for the oncoming shit show and the oncoming absolute fucking shit thing.
You're
and that
doubling down. That's it right now.
Yeah, no, I'm doubling down because I'm still waiting for it. He also beat Oakland. Oh, that's fucking great. Anyway, no, but Joreuz himself has been on a grind at the bubble scene. You know, he's been doing a lot of good stuff. Like he's competing in all the nice cactus tournaments, and in general, his repertoire is pretty good. The only thing he's really been losing are the main sort of major step up sort of tournaments, which I guess could be understandable. But even then, with his latest outing in the in the spring series, like he's been grinding his way back up as much as he can, you know, and with good performances in Star League and now moving into the Rising Stars potentially, you know, I think he's playing under what was the name of that team I can't pronounce? Fuck it.
Georgia Joe?
Georgia Joe, that's it. You know, they're competing in Superstar League as far as I'm aware. So we'll see what he can do in a league format, especially because that is where we'll see, I think, the best of this guy come out.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so he's got his name up on the board. It'll be interesting if anyone makes a play for him. Like we'll be talking about that a little bit later because I could definitely see his value. The problem is it's just straight up risk. He hasn't had that chance to play within the RLRS, let alone RLCS, and the only thing that's got to his name right now is the Spring Series. Is that just too much of a flash in the pan moment for some teams, or is that enough to show that he's up to snuff? I will say as well, Archie had a fantastic weekend and should be one that's looked at, but I reckon he'll be more comfortable and needs a bit more time within the rival series. So Joreuz, fantastic player and an up and coming one, but are we like hyping him a little bit too early? I will expect to see him in the rival series next season though, both of them.
Yeah, it's an ever-growing story, I think, for Joreuz, so certainly keep your eyes on him as he goes on throughout the rest of the scene. Our second question from Velixo comes in, and he talks about, well, how is the podcast and website named RLAfterShock? I think actually you named it, if I recall correctly, Bacon.
Yeah, this was back at Landon. Jay, you were there like, I want to do this. I want to do a podcast. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm on board. Hell yeah. And It was basically after two things. We were there like, we want to name something that is very close to something in Rocket League whilst also not being, you know, straight on for it. It's got to be meaning. And generally, we're there like we were looking at names that were all based around like, you know, after the shit happens, like breaking news, RL breaking news. That's a bit too generic. Thinking about, and then it was something along the lines that I just went, what about the car, the Aftershock, because it's my favorite car from Sarp and going forward, and it works perfectly here because it's like the after the shock, like it works perfect.
I remember, what is it? We settled on something like a rocket pod or some shit like that, and I was like, this is it's a bit shit, but like we haven't got anything better. And then you piped up saying RLAfterShock, and was like, that's the one. That's the one. That's it. You know, it's like one of those moments where it's like you just come up with you just spitball a bunch of ideas, and someone just like spitballs something absolutely genius. You're like, holy fucking shit. You know, that's basically how it went for us. So yeah, that's the story behind RLAfterShock. It was my idea, but Bacon was the man that came up with the whole name. And obviously shout out to Andy Designs, who did all the designing for the logos, the assets, everything like that. Did a fantastic job in creating a brand for us. So it was a team effort when it came to RLAfterShock in its inception. So yeah, there you go. That's how Aftershock got named, and that's how it will remain for at least a very long time to come. I hope I don't have to rebrand. Of course, that day is coming soon anyway.
I mean,
because
you've got Valorant Aftershock coming up. It's not as catchy.
Oh, yeah, no. We'll have to. I'll have to. I think what we'll do is we'll recolor. We'll recolor, and we'll just we'll call it ValAfterShock. VAL. ValAfterShock. There you go.
Yeah, that works. There you go.
It works for me. Anyway, thank you for your question, Velixo, and thank you to everyone for the mailbag segment for this week. Again, if you do want to get involved in the show, we're not on Twitch, are we? Just go to the Discord link in the show notes and video descriptions, and go follow that Discord link. Go ahead and join our community. Send a question in the mailbag channel, and chances are we'll answer that question live on an episode of our RLAfterShock. It doesn't have to be a question either. You can suggest a talking topic, and we'll even do something about that. So, have at it, boys. Anyway. Let's get to our tournament roundup. And of course, it has to be the Spring Series, the European Spring Series. Over the past 4 weeks, we've had all the major tournament regions competing for their chances at victory and glory. We had, I believe it was South America first, then North America, then OCE, and now here to end off with Europe in the final week of things. And appropriate so, because Europe is the best region, as we all know, of course. So, before we get onto that talking topic, I did want to address some general points about the Spring Series, because honestly, of all the majors that we've ever had and all the Premier tournaments that we've ever had, this has to be one of the worst quality ones I think I've ever seen. Just on like, you know, a logistical side of things, right? Like, you know, for the teams and the tournaments, we'll talk about that in a moment here. But for like the broadcast, I've never seen a major tournament have as many broadcast mistakes as the Spring Series did, Bacon. And it's like, I'm looking at fucking mistaked flags, players on wrong teams, players missing their thirds in graphical assets queued in the middle of fucking matches. Like, there was a great clip where someone just queued in the on-call live graphic and it just slid over the game, just randomly in the middle of the fucking thing. How do you make that mistake? You know, like, you know, this... I went to school for studying broadcast, and I specialize specifically in audio, but I also understand how production works from a video standpoint and a technical standpoint as well. So I'm thinking to myself, like, someone has been asleep at the fucking vision mixer for this entire thing. Like, how did this broadcast become so fucking shit from a technical standpoint here?
And it's DreamHack running the production here. Like, that bewilders me for what's going on there for them. Like, then there's also the aspects on top, like video cam quality was all over the fucking shop with everything going on. Like, you could see definitely with the like free on the analyst desks, like everyone having different cam qualities was really, really jarring, and there was just no uniformity there. Like you said, even assets like names and like basically labels going over their borders, meaning that they weren't cropped or fit to a certain area, so just set up incorrectly. Like you said, flags being wrong. My favorite one was Virtuoso having the flag for Ivory Coast instead of Ireland, which was just there like, okay, I can see where you've got that wrong, but it's not hard to just Google the flag of Ireland. Where have you got this flag from? It's like super weird.
Here's the thing, right? Because like, if you're ever going to get generic images, then like you must have like a generic sort of image thing with like, you know, just Google searching Irish flag and save that as the Irish flag _PNG or something like that. You know, it's like, you know, there you go. Like, didn't you just link it up in the graphic asset on the I think it's BitFocus. No, that's the thing to link stream decks to FusionRL. Anyway, you link it up in your graphics software, and it's easy as that. Like, you don't have to go. I don't know how you fucked that up. You know, like,
I only can think of someone thought this would be a funny joke as like a little Easter egg to put on him, but with so many mistakes within the broadcast, it just looks like another mistake.
Here's the thing. If that was the only mistake, then everyone would have been like, wait, what the fuck? And then that would have just been the end of it, right? But the fact that you had that and all the other issues that we had, and it's like, with webcam quality, you can give a bit of forgiveness because obviously you're working with other setups that aren't fully inside your control, you know, so that you haven't got all that and everything. But, you know, like certain things like audio, I think, did really well. And for DreamHack to do audio well is not surprising to me at all. They have some of the best audio production in all of esports for my liking. And obviously that tickles my fancy quite significantly. But, you know, just everything else just didn't really go as well as they would have wanted it to. Like, again, casters missed cues. You know, all the graphics in particular is what really ticked everybody off because it was so prominent and visually obvious that someone had fucked it up. And it's like, what? Like, you know, I don't understand how they made a massive mess of this. And I understand that it was a DreamHack white label project, but like, I don't know how. I just still don't understand how this all fucking fell to pieces because DreamHack did some amazing tournaments in the last last year, and it's like, you know, I don't know who to blame here because it feels so fucking jarring right here to see all this shit go wrong.
Yeah, and if you'd watched the French broadcast, they're all there, Jay, and some of the quality on the feeds they were getting through because they were having to, it seemed, just pull this off of like YouTube and the quality was just not up to snuff, and they would have to go and just screen cap like Twitch sometimes. Like, it was not good for them as well. So it's just across the board quality being abysmal for them, which is, like we said, when it's your main product, you're hiring on in DreamHack to do it for you. how is this coming about? We have no clue.
I mean, like, the only thing that can be comparable is the fucking Renegade Cup finals, okay? Like, that set the pace for exactly how terrible this production was. And even on an admin side of things also went wrong. So it's like, even more comparisons to the Renegade Cup, because the adminning was shit there. But what was with the application of the rules here? Now, I'm going to bring up the Canyons thing when they took on Dignitas. I think it was game 2. Tox had some disconnection, and he claims it was DDoSing issues. I don't know how true that is. But basically, the bottom line is that he stopped, and they didn't pause the game, even though in RLCS rule sets, it would have been, that would have been a pause call. And the opportunity and the play would have stopped, and then they would have reset it back to a point where they would have had the where they would have been able to get Tox back into the game. And it started at the very I can't remember what the specifics around it was, but basically that's the way it would have done in RSCS. But for this tournament, it feels like somebody changed the rules. I'm not sure whether that's a DreamHack thing or a Psyonix thing, but basically they were saying we can't pause the game until Tox leaves the server. And it's like, well, that's not always technically possible, guys. Like, if we just did it like that, then we would have... We would have some fucking really, really shit situations happen, like what happened with Tox, which may or may not have cost them that series against Dignitas.
Yeah, and we talked about this a few weeks back, about the whole spirit of the rules sort of thing. In those sort of cases, like, why not? Like, it's been running for so long. If a player shouts out that he's got a problem and it's still very early on into the game, just stop it. You've got the capabilities. It feels really just all over the shop of just, I don't know, bad management.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not like this is just a 1 week thing where this happened in this 1 week alone. Like, my understanding is that all the other tournaments, all the other Spring Series tournaments that we had before, like, all those also had massive, massive issues. And some of them were very similar to the shit that we had, to the shit we had here on the European Spring Series. I'm just like, you've had all this time to correct these issues and you've not been able to correct them. Like, guys, that's not fucking good. That's really, really not good. It's not like you've been working flat out for 4 weeks. You've been working for 2 days a week for 4 weeks. You've had Monday through Friday to figure out what the fuck is going on and fix it. And it's like, I've been through production. I've realized how hard it can be, but that is plenty of time to fix technical issues. Like, it's so much, even after the fact of the broadcast, you've got so much time for feedback and everything like that. And on the admin side of things as well, to clarify and clear some things up with Psyonix. If Psyonix did bring the ban hammer down on the admins and said, look, you can't do that because of this, then absolutely the responsibility and the criticism falls on Psyonix. But whoever made it as bad as it was, like, guys, this is just not on. This is a Rocket League major. This is the biggest thing that we've had after the championship series, and it's probably the biggest thing that we have for a little bit of a while to come.
Yeah, and then
Fusion not applying.
Yeah, and then there's also the facts of, say, following the rules for lateness to check-ins for the qualifiers. Like, I know just straight off, mate, Ryan, were 30 seconds late to their game and weren't allowed to play their match. They checked in 30 seconds late.
That was cleared up. That was cleared up, I believe, with specifics on how those on how that was played out. If I recall correctly, there was actually I think CJ came out and talked about the specifics of how timestamps work on Smash. So they couldn't really. So it depends really on how. When tickets are raised and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and it just comes down to, but then some teams like being late by a few minutes and then still being allowed to play. It just feels like very much there's not, but that just comes down to different moderators having different leniencies themselves instead of an across the board. This is what happens in all case scenarios,
Yeah, and I think that as a result, that Spring Series becomes the worst major ever to be broadcast, and that's saying something, man. Like, that is we set a pretty high bar when it comes to Rocket League tournaments, and unfortunately, they just want to.
We're not counting Renegade Cups as a major. Is that just a minor then?
I think it's officially is a minor actually. Hold on, let me find out.
Double check that, because this is definitely not as bad as fucking and Northern Arena.
Oh
Remember
no,
the
this is
problems
this
they had
is
with that?
oh no, this is a major. Okay, no, okay, so not quite the worst major in the Rocket League esports space. Renegade
had
Cup
an
definitely
attempt at it.
disappoints. It had an attempt.
Also,
like it
can
was
we
like
talk about, like, since we're talking about a broadcast and that, the graphics package was really jarring anyway. I loved the whole blue and pink theme, but, like, how they actually displayed the brackets, like, being at right angles to everything, obtuse, and that, it was really jarring on the eyes and super just annoying.
I think it's a bit of a niche thing because I didn't really wasn't bothered too much by it, so I wasn't like super duper like, oh, it's bad, and it wasn't. I didn't feel like that at all. So I was just kind of like, okay, well,
It was just a bad styling choice. That's it. Really.
I guess for some people, I can see where that comes forward, but for me, I wasn't too bothered about it. So let that be what it is. But yeah, no, just some things I wanted to address about the tournament because we need to address these things going forward because we can't afford to put anything but our best foot forward. Like, understand, this was broadcast on the BBC, right? The
ESPN.
British Broadcasting Company, ESPN as well. BBC is the only channel that every single person can access, assuming you pay a TV license. Okay, it's on cable, it's on Freeview, it's on the fucking internet. Okay, it's the only TV station that is accessible to the majority, to everybody that has a TV in the UK. So like, it's the biggest audience you can get in front of when it comes to British TV, and to have that shit be, be a fucking, be prominent and have all these issues just crop up. It's like, that's not kosher. That's not fine.
Let's not even include the fact that a lot of what the BBC does sets the tone for the whole world. Like when you look at iPlayers and such like that, Jay, that was a technology implemented by the BBC first and then given on out to everyone else. They sort of set the tone for that. So when it comes to esports and finally getting it staged there, you want that to go well because that could set the tone and precedent going forward.
Absolutely, and I don't think they set a precedent that we can be proud of, and I wouldn't be surprised if the BBC didn't want to touch esports again for another little bit of time. Not that I'm too fussed about it, because the BBC, when it comes to their own representation of gaming, is a fucking shambles. But that's a conversation for another day. Anyways. So yeah, that's just the general talking points about the broadcast quality and the adminning, because it has to be addressed if we're going to be talking about this stuff in general. So we can all add those caveats and moving on to our conversations of storylines and other things that are going on in terms of performances, because there was a lot to cover, and we'll start with the qualifiers here because, as you mentioned at the top of the show, there were some teams that didn't quite make it all the way through, and I'm going to start in this case with Oxygen. Obviously, we talked about them, and we had to make a mention to those guys and how well they did, because they did not do well. They really did not do well. Now, first of all, falling to Magnifico in the upper bracket, I can see where this would where this could be understandable. But Magnifico, even though they are a great rising bubble scene team, they are still a bubble scene team. Okay. And they didn't even make it into the final top 8, where position which I think Oxygen should have been able to make pretty easily. And they fell to them by trying to set up a reverse sweep in the round of 16 in the upper bracket. The fact they were even on match point against Magnifico 2-0 down at a point, that's fucking insane. Like, what the hell happened to Oxygen here?
Well, can we even talk about Oxygen only just scraping on past Gemini? Gemini being Seeb, Friss, and Didris. Now, again, that is a team I don't rate anywhere near Magnifico, but that is way too close for comfort. Like I said, just scraping it. You're looking at, mainly 1 or 2 goal games there. And dropping to Magnifico, big yikes. Magnifico had a decent time. We'll get on to him later. But yeah, then you see where Oxygen went on later. Frio against Servette Geneva. Again, largely 2-0, 2-1, 3-1. Servette Geneva are changing things up. They're trying to figure out a new team. They had a new player for this tournament with Maybe, so I can see that there. They finally redeemed themselves as well, I guess, with a 3-0 against Girls, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. But then the drop to AS Monaco, where AS Monaco seemed a lot more convincing. You look at that and just go, what is going on with Oxygen right now? Like, this is a team that is really dropping off towards the end of league play, Jay, and it just seems to continuously drop here when you're going up against teams that aren't RLCS teams at all. They're, bubble teams and, higher RLRS teams. Like, it's just not on for this side that want to stay together, but everyone's shouting them and going, no, you can't. There's something has to be changed up now. Otherwise, you're just going to keep on sinking.
And here's the thing, right? Like when it comes down to when it comes down to Oxygen and where they stand, like, you know, just to add extra context, like this is a team that won one of the DreamHack Pro Circuit events, went grand finals at Summit, and during the summer of last year, they were considered the best team in the world at one point. You know, it's like what's happened to this team to have gone so far down the fucking shitter at this point, because they are in a massive slump. I don't even think they've made anybody's top 10 rankings. I know they didn't make yours for RLAfterShock.com.
Nope.
So you know they have really just fallen down, and in this case as well. Like, just what happened, you know? Because like there are some good results in this one. And again, fair enough that they've managed to beat Girls in a 3-0 fashion, but let's be real. Girls was a team of a player that's now completely retired, and also thrown together from just the last second scraps of whoever didn't get a squad in the open qualifiers. And these guys, you know, probably treated it like a weekly. It wouldn't surprise me too much in that respect. You know, I don't think the Girls results are particularly valuable when it comes to measuring a team. And for Oxygen, they took that victory, and of course they were able to beat several teams in the last parts of the open qualifier. Obviously, that victory against Gemini is fucking just really, really bad, all things considered, because, like, you know, all the way down to game 5 against that team, and all the way down to game 5 against Magnifico on a reverse sweep scenario, like, what has happened to this team, man? Like, what the where has all the talent and coordination and the potential that we saw in this side gone? Because remember back when we were PSG, we're like, yeah, this team is great. There's nothing we can change that will make them better. They just have to work on their confidence. So it's like, now it's something deeper than that. It's something much deeper than just confidence here.
Yeah, because, well, I'll say it's a two-factor. Farah not being able to form like he wants to, and like he seems, quite frankly, I'm going to say washed, but, you know, not up to snuff. He's not being able to pop off what he wants. And a follow-on effect from that is Chaussette is not able to play because he's not getting set up correctly. Fruity is doing okay, but he's more of like a fill the gap for the team. And basically everything has fallen apart from this side. Going forward, it's going to be super interesting because Oxygen have just picked up all 3 players. I doubt they're going to drop one of them so soon. You know, when you just pick them up, there's probably a buyout clause or whatever in their contracts. I don't see them dropping a player that quickly unless there is some sort of like extreme circumstance. And that scares me because I think if they continue like this, going to next RLCS, they're going to be a bottom team and drop out. And I mean, we've said it before. You go into RLRS and for a lot of RLCS teams, that is you being put out to, you know, dry. That's it. You're done because to get back is so hard. And that scares me when you've got possibly some of the greatest players in the world. Like Fruity, I think, is a phenomenal middleman, like solid anchor for any team. Chaussette is one of the best strikers in the world. He just has not had that capability to shine. And it's scary right now. Because, like, again, back last summer, when we saw Farah popping off, he was such a big, boisterous player on the pitch, but we've not seen him at all in that same light recently, and it's a big problem for this entire team because they revolve on everyone being at the top of their game. As soon as one drops, they all drop.
And I'm glad you mentioned Farah individually as well, because I think if there's one player that's on the chopping block for a roster move, it would be him. I don't think that's going to happen, as you say.
That's been the case for a year.
Yeah.
Everyone's been saying it. They proved everyone wrong last summer, and everyone's like, yes, he's back, great. And everyone was super happy about it. But as soon as he drops back in, you can see, yeah, he's still the same problem.
And it's like, you know, with the way that he's, like, you know, contested this flash in the pan performance in the last year, it feels like it's just kind of fallen off the edge of a cliff for him. And for Oxygen, obviously, it's holding them back big time. As you've mentioned, I don't know if they'll actually want to be willing to make a roster move, considering they just picked up this entire team on the Oxygen organization. And I just... You know, I just don't know where you go from here if you're Oxygen. You know, I don't know how you approach this. I don't know how you improve on this, because there was a case where it was mentality. Now it's just not being good at the moment, and it's not easy to fix that without making roster moves or without, you know, doing something massively justifiably fucking impactful and shaking to the to the actual team and its infrastructure. But alas, that is the Oxygen team, and a lot of doubts going into the next season of the Championship Series as well for these guys. As you mentioned, they could well be on the verge of relegation, and for Oxygen to just pick up this team for their next season and get relegated, that's not a good look. Let's put it that way. Singularity, another team that disappointed. I wanted to talk about these guys because I think given the fact that Mognus has moved away, I think that they can agree with me in what I said in last week's episode, not last week, 2 weeks ago's episode, that Mognus to this team was a bad idea, and it really, really showed. Singularity, sure, they got some good results. They beat out the Los Hombres squad, which is Nachital's new team. They beat AS Monaco in a 3-0 fashion, but then they got clapped by the Clappers, and then got shit on by BDS in the lower bracket. Like, Singularity made the wrong move here. Like, it's very clear to me that they made the wrong choice here.
Yeah, like we said, Mognus at best would be a side grade, and this looks like they maybe took one step back. It weren't a massive dropping off. Like, they still put on a decent performance, but the best performance for them, was against AS Monaco, and you saw their weakness against BDS, and BDS were a weird team all weekend long. So for me, Singularity had an easy start to their run, but that cannot be said anything otherwise. Like, Effectors and Los Hombres were not massively strong team. Like, when you look at Los Hombres, they're Effectors, Primary, Force in a row. They're just a bubble French team. That's all it is. The Mets and National K Monster, that's a strong side. But again, that I would think would just be, trying to pip it into the RLRS at that level with that combination right there. So when you're already a secure RLCS team, making that move, Mognus was not the right choice at all. And it'll be interesting to see where they go further. Like, who are they going to pick up instead? Like, we all were looking at that and going, right, you've got both Nolly and Low. Do you want to double down and have, a trifecta team with everyone being able to play everywhere? That, I think, was the idea of Mognus. Or do they want to go for a more aggressive player or a more defensive player? They've got to make their decision now, because they're going to need the time from this offseason. You can already start to see moves are starting to be made, and there is going to be a crazy offseason of transfer moves now. So by getting rid of Mognus, I think they've just given themselves a second chance to pick up a even better player with what is being rumored from the other teams in RLCS.
Yeah, and with the with the Singularity side being where they are at right now, I don't think they can go back to Godsmiller. I think they've already that ship is pretty much sailed at this point.
Well, it's the bridge is burnt, but you don't want to go wading through the water back to get him. As much as I feel bad for Gods, but if I was him, I wouldn't want to be playing. This team is just going to be done straight on out.
Well, that's the thing, right? You look at
it's the complexity effect.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say, the complexity effect. We talked about that, I think, a couple of weeks ago in the show, and we mentioned how, hey, they've kicked Godsmiller, and now this is going, if they do decide to bring him back, then it's just not going to work out as well as they would have wanted it to. They're going to try and recreate a magic that has already disappeared because of the fact that you decided, hey, let's go ahead and drop this guy. And that is probably going to be, Singularity, they've still got potential and I've still got some faith in what they could do. Though and Nolly are still really, really good players, but they just have to find that third. And again, I don't think that getting rid of their captain, for all intents and purposes, was the right move to make away. So, yeah, I don't know. It feels like this team's lost its vision, it's lost its composure, and it's kind of just feeling lost in general at the moment. I don't know where they go from here. I don't know how they approach themselves, because this was a disappointing result, And again, I don't want to go too harsh with these guys because they just promoted to the Championship Series. They just maintained their spot this past season, and now they're already looking like they might just fall behind the likes of Endpoint, and obviously considering how well they did compared to Endpoint, that's not a very good sign for them. But yeah, Singularity, disappointing. I did want to talk about Veloce, and I was going to imply that they disappointed, but to be honest, taking a look at the results, I don't know if they just got really unlucky, to be honest, in this bracket. Like, they just did not have a good fucking time at all. They took it on they went up. There's evidence to both sides, because they went up against Shaky and then they lost to them. And then they took on Svet Geneva, who have a new third in Mavie, and they've been having some good performances in their respective scenes. And they lost to them as well in the lower bracket.
Svet Geneva got 3-0'd by Oxygen. You can't give that away. Like for Veloce to get 3-1, I'm sorry, no. And you look at the lads of Shaky. What was that? That was
Cynical, Hakeem, and Ole.
Thank you. So Cynical, Hakeem are good. Ole's just coming on through, and from what we've seen, he's a good player. But it's still, they're like a team that might be, by the time we get around to the RLRS players, a team that could pip that on in. But right of now, that's a team that, is more prospective talent with lots of mechanical skill. That is something which Veloce have never had a problem with. They've never had a problem with more aggressive teams. They've been able to shut that down with solid defense and then being able to work up themselves with Freaky getting on the attack himself to really make the defense dysfunctional. If anything, Veloce, that sort of play style should have been right easy for them to take on because they've been able to knock out the last man in defense. When you've got a team that's very mechanical, they go very heavy into the attacks. They would have had no one in defense and easy up and overs. Veloce had a shit day, and we don't know whether this is going to be something that continues onwards or if it's just an off day for them, and that is weird.
Well, going back to what we were saying in the championship series, one of the main storylines that we were building in was the idea that Veloce skate by on teams that are off form. And, I just wanted to ask about whether or not you thought that these teams were on form, the ones that beat down the Veloce side. Obviously, Shaky is still a very difficult fucking team to sort of weigh up because they are relatively new guys. But for Savage and Eve, obviously, we know a lot about these guys. And I don't know if you got the chance to see them in the Oxygen match. I don't know if you got the chance to see them in the Veloce match or any of the other games that they took on over the course of the bracket, but I wanted to ask, are they, were they in a good formation to beat Veloce, or was it just Veloce just not living up to the expectations that were set for them?
Definitely Veloce not living up, because you look at what Shaky did afterwards, it isn't anything massively to write home about. The same with Svet Geneva. Shaky, by the way, were able to go on, take down RLAF, and then they lost to the Stormtroopers. So a respectable run, but nothing incredible, nothing to really write home about, considering that the Stormtroopers, I'm just trying to bring them up on the screen. Polar Dead Monster, apparently Jack. I like that side, but we'll have to see how it really goes. For me, that is just a top of the bubble tier sort of team, nothing massively incredible. And when you look at RLAF, Matt's Gray, Kieran, and Mads, it's okay. It's just bottom of the bubble. It's not really anything crazy right there. So, yeah, for me, it just looks like Veloce absolutely shut the bed. We're not ready for this at all. And
I mean, there is also that element, that angle to approach, obviously, the fact that, you don't know what teams you'll be up against in the open qualifiers. And I guess it's part of the reason why a lot of teams are frustrated about it.
But that's again, the same for everyone. All the bubble teams are in the same boat. Yeah.
Necessary evil. I mean, for bubble teams, obviously, they don't have to. Well, the bubble teams technically are favoured because of the fact that they'll have the preparation time to figure out how to beat a team like a Veloce, for example. So in that respect, they've got a lot of materials to work from when it comes to checking out RLCS matches and so on and so forth. Versus Veloce don't really have much to work with because there are no VODs from Shaky as far as I can remember, and Svet Geneva are they've got Swiss scene VODs from TCS and SCSL, which you could technically use, but they're not quite the same sort of caliber as the level that Veloce are playing at. So I don't know how useful that could be.
And the only last thing I can say for Veloce is that we know of the health issues that Freaky are having, and it just comes down to that one. If it really had hurt him enough, they've been bringing in Mystic as a sub, for these qualifiers. So
Freaky's got health issues?
Yeah, he's got problems with the muscles in his face. Currently going now, so
okay.
There was a really bad taste joke. I can't remember by what bubble scene player or whatever that said how do they communicate then if he can't talk? But I don't know to what extent that goes in that thing. But we're just saying all I'm saying, if it was super bad, and he wasn't able to play, they would have got in a sub or Mystic to play just for this tournament instead, whilst he, heals and gets better. But for me, it just looks like just a super bad day at the office. But when Veloce are one of the most consistent teams in Rocket League, this to me stems a different issue.
Okay, in that case, like I can give a little bit of leeway because I don't know what the extent of these actual, health issues are. If Freaky has got something wrong with him, then that might affect things in a way that might not that might throw things off. I mean, like, any sort of illness really fucks you up. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not you're hungover, you've got a pain in your hand, or you've got a pain in your leg. Like I've played with I played with a broken leg in the past when I was on an amateur team, and mate, that's not fucking fun. Like even though the leg does not have anything to do with it, like the pain and the morphine I was on to try and get me off that fucking off that pain is really bad, and it really fucks you up in a way you wouldn't expect. So okay, I can give a little bit of leeway and I can give a little bit of forgiveness to Veloce in that respect, but it's definitely a one-off thing for this team. Other teams to know, I did want to talk about Triple Trouble, obviously, because I did want to see how well they would have done. But taking a look at the actual bracket and where they came, I think they fell out in day fucking 1 of the bracket, because I can't see them at all on this on this Liquipedia page.
They dropped super fucking early.
See, that's the thing. Right? They've dropped so early that I can't even find them. Right. So like, I'm scanning through this. I can't seem to find it. Like, what tell me some details about this Triple Trouble side. What the fuck happened?
I don't want to talk about them. They're already dead, Jay. Like, it wasn't good. We already know the problems.
We have to weigh out whether or not eekso was a good call for them.
There is pain right now, okay? That's what you're putting me through. Yeah, it just weren't good. Nah. eekso didn't work with them. I'm currently trying to fucking find them on the bracket, like you said. But, yeah, it's just nah. It just did not work. Yeah, why can't I fucking find them on the bracket?
They're listed on the team list.
Yeah. I fucking saw them there. Because I saw them on Smash drop into... well, I was going to say Savet Geneva. Jesus, it weren't.
Well, look, let that set the pace for what we think of the Triple Trouble side and how well they did in this tournament. Because, like, I think that honestly, compared to given what you said, and what you mentioned about the way that Bluey approaches things and how he and how he does how he does things on his own right, then I can see where eekso would have fallen down, and I think that may have thrown things off for a moment for the I think it would have thrown things off for them in their own right. I'm trying to find them out on the fucking Smash page, but I can't seem to see them. I don't actually think they made it through. I don't even think they made it on the onto day 2.
They did make it to day 2, but why are they not there? Like, this is really, really weird. I'm looking
at the day 1 pools, and I'm not seeing Triple Trouble in the top 4 of any of the pools.
Nah.
I don't think they made it to day 2, mate.
Wow. Like, okay.
Just goes to how much fucking research we do.
Triple Trouble.
Clearly, I think eekso was not the right call, I guess you could say, then in that respect. But are there any other teams that you wanted to note about going before we move into the main bracket?
No, not that I can think of. I'm currently double checking, but no. I mean, you've got the likes of Solari dropping to AS Monaco, but I'd allow that, in that case. They dropped to Clappers. Clappers were fucking on form, so you allow them for those cases there. Otherwise, yeah, we already talked about the girls just not going to work. That wasn't the right choice for them. They're just picking up a scrap, so I think we move on to the main tournament, Jay.
Yes, let's do that and just spare ourselves the embarrassment of trying to look up where the fuck Triple Trouble came in the actual bracket. But obviously, there was the main tournament bracket. Of course, the top 8 teams, of which they had the 4 invitees from the RLCS, Vitality, Dignitas, Mousesports, and FC Barcelona, taking on the qualified teams, the Clappers, Endpoint, Canyons, also known as ex-RCD, and Team BDS, with your standings looking as is follows. In the bracket, in the quarterfinals, we saw Canyons and Endpoint beat Dignitas and Barcelona to take each other on the first semis, and then Renault Vitality beating BDS to take on Mousesports, who clapped the clappers over in the upper bracket. Then Endpoint beat Canyons, and Vitality beat Mousesports to go into those winners finals, where Endpoint fell to Renault Vitality in a 4-1 series to claim the series advantage over in the grand finals. In the lower bracket, Dignitas eliminated FC Barcelona. BDS got eliminated first by the Clappers. Then Dig and Canyons eliminated the likes of Mousesports and the Clappers in the following round of those bracket. They took each other on with Dignitas, getting revenge for their earlier quarterfinal bout, taking on Endpoint and beating them at 4-2, and then getting swept by Renault Vitality in the grand finals. Meaning your Spring Series champions are indeed Renault Vitality. Let's start with FC Barcelona. You want to talk about disappointing teams, Bacon? This is fucking one of them. Oh my God.
I found triple trouble, by the way.
Oh, did you?
They did make it to day 2. They lost to 2 BIM, 1 head. That is Rexo, Creamy, and Rob Kieran.
Oh, God. Fucking hell, triple trouble. That's not a good look.
Nope.
Anyway.
First rounded,
back to FC Barcelona. Let's go back to FC Barcelona, because we talked a lot about this team, and we're like, okay, they're now the most exciting thing. They're the most exciting team in the in Rocket League right now, because of the way that they held themselves in the mid part of the season, how they have this ridiculous team formation that plays so well off of, you know, having the defense, midfield, and attack all playing so coordinated together. And they had this great basis to work off. We were saying, look, if they build into it here, they're going to be able to go pretty far in this bracket. They did not do that. In fact, they threw any semblance of a fucking team away and then just got absolutely rinsed, Bacon. They got rinsed by Endpoint and rinsed by Dignitas, and fair play is Dignitas, fair play is the third place team in Endpoint. But fucking hell, those matches were some of the worst I have seen in FC Barcelona history. And I mean, ever. Like, there was a point in DreamHack where we were sitting back at the back of the auditorium. I was there with Fruity, and we were saying, look, FC Barcelona need to play as a team. And that's something he said. He was like, look, I think FCB needs to play as a team, or they're going to get clapped by this fucking no-name shit squad on the DreamHack stage. And that's exactly what happened. They got absolutely clapped. And I'm thinking, like, this performance was even worse than that performance against a no-name team. And it's like, FCB, what the fuck happened? What the actual fuck happened?
So, a couple weeks back, 2 weeks back, Jay, I put my top 10 teams in the world up on the RLAfterShock website. Number 9 was Barcelona, and the first line is, I can already feel the daggers because I put them so low. Oh boy, I would want to put them even lower right now, because that team, was just absolutely diabolical, in the words of JohnnyBoi. Like, they, again, not playing together as an entire team at all. Flakes looked like he had fucking zoned on out before even turning up to the game, let alone, you know, tuning on in. This team just did not give a shit. Now, why? Is this team just done? They know they're making a roster move and they just can't announce it yet? What is the reasoning here? There's something clearly going wrong in that Barcelona camp, and for them to just completely, like, you know, peace out from the get-go, there are so many questions. And the fact that hurts me most is this team, after having the shittest performance I have ever seen, not getting a single game, being able to get a total of 4 goals across both series, and the team still walks away with $13,000. They didn't even have to qualify. That pisses me off something rotten.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And this is... So, after they increased the prize pool for the top 4 teams of regionals, and then allowed those 4 teams to come over here, no, they shouldn't have increased the prize pool of regionals. They should have put that money into this tournament, because, like, just on a completely different note, the prize pool money breakdown is completely ridiculous anyway. 23K.
We already covered that in the announcement, didn't we?
So I don't understand that at all. But here, Barcelona to just basically turn up, and I mean, they were moving about the pitch, but I think it was just merely so that they didn't get DC'd, you know, at all. There was no point to this team, and they did not talk to each other. I wouldn't, you know, be surprised if Flakes was, I don't know, watching anime or something in the background, because he weren't even paying attention to this. You know, he's got way too much. This is such a shit problem going on. And the worst thing about it is with regionals, where they really stood up and you're like, this team can be as good as, you know, the players that's in it. And they've just got to get over themselves. This is
Like,
a bunch of... This is just a bunch of children that are good at a game, but they don't know how to work together. And Barcelona, they've got to do something on a management level, but as we've already said, with Esports here, they don't really care about that. They're just more about giving this as an opportunity for Barcelona to rep themselves in the Esports. I don't know what is going on here. And my only problem is that because the players are so good, if they were given a crunch time, they could stay in RLCS. But that spot would be deserved by other teams.
And I agree. I think that spot was well deserved by other teams, to be honest. Like, you know, usually I'd be laughing at how you'd criticize a player because I know that you're like the good guy out of the two of us here. But like, there's nothing funny about this. Nothing funny about this performance whatsoever. They scored 4 goals in the entire fucking tournament. 4 goals. That is shocking. Absolutely shocking for a team of absolute stars who need to be showing up performances. Like Devo's a world champion, Ronicky and Flakes are certainly world championship worthy, and this team on paper should be able to do some magical stuff. But since the outset, from the Savage days, the project and the idea and the theorem behind just putting 3 strikers together and hoping for the best has not worked. And it hasn't worked for a very fucking long time. The final semblance of when they feel like they actually had something that worked, when Devo became a bit more defensive and Flakes and Ronicky did their own little team link up. When that came to fruition, I genuinely thought, okay, finally, this is the peak. This is the moment right here. FC Barcelona should be able to do something in Spring Series, but they just fucked about. Like, it just looks so terrible. And again, to mention what you brought up earlier, $13,000 for the last place teams. It's like, that could have easily take that away and give it back to Dignitas and Reno Vitality. Endpoint and Canyons, in fact, in that top 4 position, because FC Barcelona weren't fucking deserving of that. They absolutely weren't fucking deserving of that. That's the reason why that prize pool split pissed me off back in the day, because this is fucking stupid. So stupid. How the hell were FC Barcelona rewarded for being absolute fucking shit in this tournament?
And the thing that annoys me right now, a lot of people would be there like, oh, but their games were against Endpoint and Barcelona. You know, they weren't the bubble teams. They weren't the RLRS teams coming on through. That don't matter. If anything, that's better for Barcelona because they should be able to know how those guys are going to play. They should be able to look upon their VODs, upon their replays, to research and get ready for that. But there was no resemblance of that at all on the pitch. These guys for the last month had just been doing whatever the fuck they want and not working together, not scrimming. And it just looks like ludicrous. It is bad for Rock Lee in a nutshell and bad for the players. Like, after Flakes got picked up by Barca, you're like, okay, this is a risky move. Going forward, I wouldn't know any other team that in their right mind would want to pick up that, lads. Because if you look at Barcelona right now, Jay, who's the guy that you're going to get rid of realistically on that team? It's going to be
That's
Flakes.
the problem. That's the reason why it just goes fucking nowhere, because there's no one that you can replace. And the project clearly doesn't work. It's not worked for the longest time in the world. They beat rival series level just because of the fact they're all fucking championship level players. And now we're here in a situation where they should be looking for a world championship. And right now they're looking about as bad as Oxygen did. Like, this was fucking awful. Absolutely awful. And to contrast as well, I know that you mentioned obviously the Endpoint and Dignitas results. Remember that FC Barcelona in Championship Series swept Endpoint, and then they won a 5-game series, or they took Dignitas to 5 games on their series in Championship Series.
And we have to say, guys. Dig on day 1, when they went up against Barcelona, were god-awful. Like, Dig, again, we're in a very similar state where I was worried. I thought, why the fuck have we got Barcelona and Dignitas not bothering with this tournament? You know? And Dig fixed it for day 2. We'll give them that. But it was still that point of Barcelona not being able to play against a Dignitas that, quite frankly, any other team in this bracket could have beaten. Dig got lucky. Barcelona should be ashamed of themselves.
Absolutely. Like, I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly. There's nothing funny about this. Nothing funny about it whatsoever. FC Barcelona just... I've got no more faith in this team. I'm not going to have any more faith from here on out just because the fucking if you're going to have a tournament performances like this, I don't think you deserve a championship series level spot. Like, this was just atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. And hopefully something contextualizes it going forward. But man, oh man, like, what a disappointment. What a disappointment. And if you're an FC Barcelona fan who's been, you know, singing their praises for the longest time, you should be just as disappointed as we are, because this was not a performance from a team that should be in the championship. It absolutely was not.
Actually, if there is anyone out there that thinks they can defend Barcelona for this, I want to hear it, Jay. Because
come on the podcast, seriously.
Yeah, I actually want to see any reasoning to go that direction.
Here's the thing, right? If you think I won't actually do that, you are thoroughly mistaken. I actually have sent open invitations to people in the past to say, look, come on the show and defend your point. Not one of them have responded. But if anyone does think they can defend Barcelona in this response, then hit me up. Like, Twitter DMs are open, and I'll get you on the show and we'll fucking discuss it next week, because to be honest, I don't see a way. I do not see a way this is plausible here.
The only asterisk on that is just, as long as, you know, your point is somewhat written out beforehand, not just the mad ravings of a lunatic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, don't worry. Like, you know, the Reddit,
you want
the
someone
Reddit
to come
dribble
on and be structured and actually, like, have a good point there, to which, you know, you can learn
That's the
from
thing,
and
right? You
grow.
know, if we can destroy them in one sentence, and they keep arguing, then it's like, look, at that point, just get the fuck out of my
Don't
show.
argue with stupid. That is
exactly.
it.
It's like, you know, don't argue with stupid, don't stick your dick in crazy, and don't drink tea that's too hot for you. Anyways. FC Barcelona disappoint. BDS, I want to say they're disappointed to a lesser extent, to be honest. I can respect this result a little bit more because they did come up against Renault Vitality in the quarterfinals, and, you know, for their first outing against Championship Series level, that's okay. I feel like, you know, for BDS, it wasn't the best of scenarios for them. They did already beat Singularity, so they've already got some Championship Series victories under their belt. And against the Clappers side is where I think the real concerns cropped up for BDS, because that was not a series I think they should have lost, even though it went down to the wire and Clappers just edged them out in 2 overtimes.
Well, realistically, both series were super close, bar... I'll say it, the very last game where Vitality finally figured it out, BDS, and were able to easily get the win after that. But like you said, against the Clappers, that was a very close, could have gone either way series. I mean, 2 OTs prove that exactly. But yeah, BDS, with their experience, with what they've been doing, should have been able to get that. I can only put that down to Clappers having a very strange play style, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of wanted to talk about that in just general sort of like in general context, because, like, you know, I understand that the Clappers shouldn't have been a team that BDS lost to, but in general, they had a much better performance than even many people didn't expect them to make their way through the qualifiers here. So it's like, you know, what about that play style really messed with the likes of BDS to get them that victory on that lower bracket match?
Again, it comes down to the link-ups, I'd say, largely between Joreuz and Archie. Calix, like I said, probably didn't have the most incredible performance. Like, he's an RLRS player, easy. I don't think he's up to the RCS level just yet, but where he can play more defensive and allow his 2 teammates to really just rule the roost, like, Joreuz and Archie are just destructive to teams, and BDS, where their defense is still a little bit questionable, that's just like the Spanish sort of style, even with Monkey Moon thrown on in, like, it was able to just dismantle them enough. Like, you look even then for BDS, let's just say to lighten the load a bit, when you look over to when the Canyons took down Clappers, that was a super close affair, going to overtime 3 times in that series, if I remember correctly. So BDS just got unlucky that Clappers, who were on form this weekend, like, looking at those players, some of the best I've seen those players play. So give them credit there. The Clappers really turned up for this weekend, and other teams, like, tried their best, but they were not ready for this side because they didn't really know what to expect from them.
And, you know, for the, you know, for the Clapper side, obviously, you know, the fact that they're making it into this top 8 bracket is still a big fucking result for them, I feel like. So, you know, just to see those guys and step things up and do as well as they did, you know, I feel like they had a really good, you know, a really good tournament run overall, you know, and it's credit to them because, yeah, this team, if they stick together, could well be in with a chance to make a rival series, I feel like, I mean, I don't know how far they'll go in terms of promoting to championship, but, it's certainly an impact to make here on the spring series, and certainly put themselves in the picture now for the top placements in those in those players' positions. So, for the Clappers, I think that they definitely had an overperformance. The question is whether or not this will be another flash in the pan performance for a bubble scene team, or whether or not they'll sustain it going into Season 10.
The problem just completely stems from, with so much time between here and RLRS, anything can happen. This team could just, disband, and you won't see that sort of performance again, purely because it was on those three working together with natural chemistry. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. Like I said, with the performance they put on, I could definitely see RLRS and RLCS teams having a look at them. Like, straight on up, many a team would be in need. Like we were saying earlier about the need that Awkward Turtles needs a more aggressive player, where you've got, and I'm going to sneeze in a second, you've got Joreuz there, who'd be a perfect addition.
I didn't know they're a secret fourth player. I'm going to sneeze in a second. Like, howdy hell. But no, I think for the Clappers side, I mean, again, they've just got to give credit where it's due, because I think that this tournament was very good. And I'm excited to see what they'll do next. I'm sure we'll see them in Fusion, by the way. I feel like that's just appropriate to see how well they can go in a Rocket League major of all things. But yeah, Clappers did all right. So the downfall of the BDS side, I'll move on and talk about Mousesports, who fell in the same position as the Clappers here. And you know what? Like, looking at the performances, considering who they lost against, and most of those being the two teams that made it all the way to the grand finals, and getting it close against Run of Vitality as well. Like, that was a 5-game series. And Run of Vitality did get a reverse sweep in, and Dignitas did 3-1 them in the losers bracket. I honestly think, given those contexts, like, it's not as terrible for Mousesports as many would think. But based on Speed's stream leak, where he was messaging Retals basically saying that he was not happy with how RG performed in Spring Series on the day of this bracket, by the way, it's not an encouraging sign for RG's future in the Mousesports side.
I'm so amazed by that, because the day before, when, after the first day, when they got knocked down, I remember him saying, he feels like they're a top 3 team. And then on the second day, not happy with it. Now, to me, that just feels like that's a little bit of frustration after losing out there. Because, like you said, Jay, where would this team go? Mousesports did respectful, against Clappers, 3-1, more convincing than anyone else. They're even I would argue more convincing than how Canyons took them down, and they went into OTs and all that. So of course, Vitality, they played really well against. I loved that series against Vitality. That was good fun, but ultimately Vitality just figure out their opponents, and the way they're adjusting right now, how Alpha's fitting into that team is so much better. So Mouse, just leave it there. Against Dig, it's Dig. Dig on day 2 turned the fuck up. Day 1, they weren't really there. Day 2, they fixed all their problems and were able to go super far. The problem was just that run for the lower bracket. They couldn't keep that energy up when they went up against Vitality. Like, they were worn out by that point, weren't they? So
no, absolutely.
So Mouse, just take it as what it is. The big thing to question here is mentalities, because I look at this and go, clearly in Europe at the moment, Vitality and Dig are your top 2 teams. Mouse, you're third. You're behind them. A loss here is not a bad case. You're still learning to play with Arju. Keep on working at it. For them to now, I guess the damage isn't as hard if they were to throw them aside, but this with Arju has been the best we've seen Speed play. Kirks has been very commendable as well. They look to be working together. If you're going to, get rid of Arju now, it's got to be for the reason of being able to be the world's best team. And I look at these two players, I look at Speed and Kirks and go, that's a tough ask when you've got fucking Vitality and Dig there. Vitality, definitely for sure. And I'm going to say they went to game 5 against Vitality. Vitality are set in stone. We'll talk about Dig later because there's, whole rumors going on about that. But Vitality, you have to make a move that could match or beat Vitality. When you're already just able to take it to game 5s, think about that. Build upon what you currently got, because anything else for me is too much of a risk, Jay. It is not worth it.
That's the thing, like, you talk about making a move to beat Vitality, and it's like, you know, like, how the fuck do you even do that in the current climate of things? Like, you just can't, you know, like, especially with the way that certain players played up, and we'll get into more details on Vitality in a minute, but, like, for Mousesports, like, it's definitely a long con thing if they want to try and beat them overall, because, like, you know, like, there's nothing you can do right now to try and beat Vitality. Like, you got to wait and bide your time. And I think with Arju, it's a good enough sort of move to, or a good enough pickup to keep yourselves together. Like, you just got to work on some confident things. I understand the frustration because, like, I think a lot of people would have placed Mousesports to be in that losers final against Dignitas, but just the way that the draw worked out, it didn't quite work that kind of way. Like, Mousesports drew against literally the two grand finalist teams back to back and lost to them both. And, you know, there's not much you can do about that. You're just going to have to take that on the chin. And yeah, the record books will always say you came second from last, but, you know, the reality and the context of things is still very, very different, I feel like, for Mousesports. For me personally, I wouldn't take too many points away from them in terms of my, you know, grand rankings of, you know, my own personal top 10 rankings for this team. Because, like, you know, again, they've taken on that's a really tough ask to do in this kind of bracket, you know? You're
looking with this bracket, like, it was meant to be like the top 8 teams in the whole of Europe, throwing in the bubble teams as well. If Mouse are on the opposite side bracket, we've already seen they can take down the Clappers. I think they're taking down the Canyons, not a problem. Probably another 3-1 affair, at most 3-2, to which they would have then gone up against Dignitas in the losers round 3. Mouse just got a very hard side of the bracket as such, and like with their run, but that's just the way it goes. Sometimes you just got to deal with that.
And then let's think about this logically, right? Okay, if we had replaced the quarterfinal result between Canyons and Dignitas, Mousesports would have been up against Canyons there, right? So it's just a case that one upset in the quarterfinals fucked up the bracket for Mousesports, and at the end of the day, you can't control that. So I feel like Mousesports, I think especially Speed as well on his stream, like probably being a bit too harsh on himself, you know, like again, like this could have been a very, very, very different bracket if Dignitas shown up on game one, because let's be real here, you know, Dignitas, they were rusty on the first day of the bracket, and we'll get into more details on that in a moment. For now though, Mousesports, futures are in jeopardy for Arju. I really hope they're not though. For me personally, again, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't take too much of a, you know, too much away from that result for the Mousesports camp, but that is for them to make their decision. On the other half of the bracket, obviously, Canyons did make it in against the Clappers, and they faced off against Dignitas in that losers consolation final. And obviously a lot of controversy surrounding this team, like, you know, especially on the Twitterverse and how they've handled themselves, especially in the case of one particular player. But I wanted to ask about this run in particular because it's a good top 4 placement for me. But I think that Dignitas' performance contextualizes things a bit more for them, considering that they lost to them later on in the bracket and they still couldn't get the one up above the Endpoint side. Like, yes, that upset against Dignitas was impressive. Well, it was impressive on paper, but I think from watching the match itself, I was just there like, look, Dignitas, you know, they didn't give Canyons a run for their money, and yes, they did make it pretty far into that top 4, but again, had they lost and come up against Mousesports, I don't think they would have made it so far as that consolation match.
No, and I mean, you can see that with Canyons dropping to Endpoint. It was a close series, we won't say anything else, but they still dropped there, and you'd value Mouse as a better team than Endpoint. Like you were saying, if Dignitas had turned up on day 1, Mouse would have made it through the lower bracket to losers finals, because I would say Mouse would take down any other team within that bracket, bar Dig and Vitality. So you got to take Canyons into, like you said, you got to put it into its own little world and see what would have happened if. Because if Canyons had lost the Dig, they would have gone up against Barcelona. They would have taken that because Barcelona didn't even turn up on the day. So going into day 2, Canyons would have gone up against Mouse, and they would have fallen one step further back, which is realistically where you'd expect them to fall there in losers round 2. I mean, with Barca, if Barca should have been making it through that far. Realistically, out of all these teams, it should have been one of either Canyons or BDS dropping in that losers round 1 alongside Clappers. Clappers had a great performance, pushed on through. So they were the biggest upset. Canyons just, again, got lucky because of Dig not turning up on day 1. And that will be the way I look at this. Canyons, though, I will say, they're showing good, solid performance. And it'll be interesting to see them going into next season, of course. But we'll just, it's all, there still needs to be changes mixed up if they want to be able to play at the RLCS level, I'd say. Like, and solidly there, because you can see against one of the lower end teams, Endpoint, they're just not up to snuff, and we'll just see how they develop. I mean, we saw that in the promotion relegation tournament, Jay, as well, didn't we? And it's going to be interesting going forward. But Canyons, they've got another season here. They should be strong enough going forward. The off season is going to be the big teller, I think, because naturally before they go on back into the RLRS, they're going to have that off season. This should be a team that should be very hyped on up, maybe be able to find an org if there is LAN events going on. We don't know about that. Current, with the world climate, things look up, but who knows how long it'll take to get out of it. But online tournaments, they should be able to perform and continuously push for places like this. For them to be able to get top 8 is fantastic. Like, to be able to get qualified through to the Spring Series is fantastic. For them to push through to where they were is awesome. But they've got to show it more than once. They've got to continuously keep pushing.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think that Canyons, obviously, it's a great first outing for them, I feel like, at this kind of level. But just to isolate their performance individually, like, I think that they're still going to have a bit of a time to get into the to get into the championship series for next season, or after next season. They should be more specific. And obviously caveats applied to that Dignitas result, because Tox did have a technical issue in game 2, which kind of threw them off, I feel like. But with just individually and the way that they sort of performed as a team, I just feel like that in general it's not quite good enough to make it up there yet. I think in the future they would, though. I think come maybe a season or two, they'll find themselves in a position where actually they could they could have themselves a spot over in the in the championship series. I think it's definitely plausible. I think that Tox is a really good player. I do find it funny that every time he chats shit about Virtuoso, though, Virtuoso just slaps him back to reality, because it happened twice here. They took each other on in the upper bracket of the qualifiers, and they took each other on in the semi-finals, and Endpoint just basically said "fuck you" both of those times, and it was quite entertaining. But no, Canyons, again, good run. In context, though, probably not as impressive as many people would have thought it. Interested to see how far they'll go in the rival series, though, because they've got potential. They've got a lot of potential. And of course, moving on from Canyons to their El Clasico team. I think Virtuoso made that comment on Twitter. It was like, we are now the budget El Clasico of fucking Rocket League. I'm like, don't know if El Clasico is the right way to contextualize it there, mate, but I'll leave you to it.
I mean, right now, the El Clasico has got to be really Vitality versus Dig. Like, that is such a story from between them that's what you would expect for that. If not, then you might want to bring in maybe Oxygen now. If
I don't know if you can call it El Clasico at the moment, because like El Clasico implies like two incredible brands that have like a heated rivalry. Like Optic versus FaZe is an El Clasico, in my opinion. Like, come on, like you can't get any bigger rivalry than that when it comes to esports brands. The biggest one
would be over in NA with G2, NRG, and Cloud9. That's the best Rocket League rivalry there is, and it's a freeway.
The gruesome threesome.
But that is the way it is. Like, over in Europe, the best sort of rivalry for the longest time and at that top level is Vitality and Dig. So anyone else, is like, you really haven't been around long enough as a unit to say that you've got that true rivalry going on,
Look, if Dignitas and Vitality keep their teams in top form for the next year, then at that point I think we can call it an El Clasico. But that's a topic for another day. Anyways, back to Endpoint. So obviously Endpoint coming into this tournament, they had a bit of a weird move because they had Metzenaris coming in place of Nachatao. I think that a lot of people saw the move making sense with Metzenaris coming in that place. For me personally, I didn't think Nachatao was the guy to remove. And after this tournament, I believe that yes, Metzenaris was the right player to bring in. I'm still not sold, though, that Nachatao was the right player to take out. And it mostly comes down to Endpoint's day one performance. And yes, they did get a 3-0 against FC Barcelona. They did beat Canyons, but I think that some of those results, especially against Canyons, could have been a lot more far gone if Relating Wave was performing in the correct sort of fashion. Because I feel like there were times where he really missed control of the board, missed touches and missed shots that really would have given Endpoint the edge above the Canyons side. And there was one point, I think it was point blank in front of the net, and he wasn't able to go for the actual shot because he just completely whiffed on the ball. And I think that his confidence is something that needs to be worked on. And I don't think that's a shot that if you replace that situation with Nachatao, that he would have missed,
Yeah, like it's so interesting right now because Relating Wave and Natchtal were both able to be the ones to be replaced. We'll put that one out there. They both had problems on certain days, and it's interesting to think in a what if world if it was Virtuoso, Metza, and Natchtal is their Relating Wave. I mean, the what ifs are there, but so far, all we can see is this Endpoint J, compared to when they finished last season, look better, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely, they do. I mean, and there's no denying that much. Like, I think that I think it's a major improvement to say the least, and I can see a decent opportunity for them going into the next season. I just feel like, again, it could have been a little bit better if they had just made a different move in that respect. Because again, as you mentioned, Endpoint looked really fucking good. They went toe to toe against Renner Vitality. They made it into the winners finals, and I don't think they would have done if the Canyons didn't upset Dignitas. I think that Dignitas would have been able to beat the Endpoint side, and we'd be seeing a very different sort of run from them. Maybe they would have made it into that losers finals through beating out some of the other respective sides. But for me, Endpoint, again, I'm convinced that Metzenaris was the right move. Mm-hmm. I'm just not sure the player he's replacing was the good call,
I don't know. I'm happy with this currently right now, and again, they've made the move. You can't go back and change it. But again, you look at how Endpoint in this tournament, like we were contextualizing it with Canyons, Barcelona didn't turn up easy for Canyons. I would have expected Endpoint still to win that. The 4-1 against Endpoint, yeah, they're going to get smashed. Day 2, after how Dignitas turned things around, you'd expect them to win. So Endpoint got to the 3rd place. Fantastic on them. But if it was not with the current climate of what happened on day 1, it wouldn't have gone that way. Barcelona should have been able to take down Endpoint. Endpoint then would have been put in a point in that spot, even against a Dig on day 1, and that would have been the real truth there. If a bad day 1 Dig could be beaten by Endpoint, that'd been interesting to see. And then if they did, they would have to go on against Mouse in day 2. Again, this tournament is a lot of ifs and buts due to certain day 1 really not showing up performances. But Endpoint, credit where it's due, day 2 against Dig there. And this is where I'm going to really see the strength from them, Jay, because I feel like that's the fairest point. That 4-2 against Dig was super close. The only games that didn't really go anywhere close was Dig being able to get quick leads in game 3 and game 6 there, and they were able to just take it 3-1 because Dig currently are playing with more of a mentality of as soon as you get 2 goals up, you try and just hold on to it. You don't need any more. They like to get that lead and then play it safe afterwards and play a very controlling game. But Endpoint, they've got to give themselves a pat on the back because even with, like we said, that all contextualized, they still put on a good game day. Even against Vitality, I mean, don't get me wrong, Vitality were able to see it on out, but it was mainly still 1 goal differential games, and it was still a lot of goals put on by Endpoint. So Endpoint can figure out Vitality's defense. They've just got to figure out their own defense a little bit more, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, talking about the Dignitas result, how close that was. I was actually on the edge of my seat for a lot of that matchup, especially in Game 5. If there's one game that you watch throughout the entire weekend, it's Endpoint Dignitas Game 5, because that match was down to the wire. Went so far as an overtime with as many comeback goals as you fucking want. It was amazing, truly amazing stuff from them. And for Endpoint, obviously that's a great result because obviously, talking about how day 2 is the more fair result. I feel that's absolutely the case, and for them to go that well against Dignitas on their day 2 performance is actually a good result, I think, for Endpoint, and the future is looking promising for them. I just think that there's one final move that could push them over the edge to being a top tier team, but a championship contending team, I should be saying.
It shows though Virtuoso's skill here.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
here's
things
the thing,
to
mate.
look at. Relating Wave does good as a core player. Metza is not washed. You're worried after, TSM, how he would fit in here. That was our biggest worry. If that team didn't look good, everyone looked bad, So great to see Metza back into it, but Virtuoso really stepping up and in the most annoying fucking way possible with all those demos and that. But
well, that's what I was going to say, right?
See it.
If it wasn't for Alpha in Vitality, I think my MVP pick would have been fucking Virtuoso, just because of what he brought to the table outside of the stat line, because what he did, what he enabled for Endpoint, like, he is the enabler. He is the enabler, right? I feel like they actually come with a title, like, you know, some fucking bad guy, the enabler.
Yeah,
That's like, what he did, you know?
My picks for MVP, like the three best, was, of course, Virtuoso, Alpha, and Speed, I think, across that whole weekend.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
don't think anyone else would disagree with that. You know, like, just those three lads had pop-off performances, and for Virtuoso to get included with that, this lad is good, like, and he's done it through the RLRS, making it through to the RLCS, having that season where he's had to fight hard, but this coming season has got to be where he puts his namesake, and that is the truest form. That is what, when Sinus came up with his format, it feels like how they wanted things to progress for teams, and finally it's working for them, but it's, you know, way too late down the lines of RLCS and RLRS, but it's good to see Virtuoso doing it in such a raw way to make it through. He didn't get picked up by one of the top teams. He didn't even get picked up by an RLRS team. He had to make it through with other bubble players, and not even at the time thought to be super high bubble players on disc and bubblers. They formed together, and you were like, holy shit, how is this team that good? Like, they were near enough no names. They were good no names, but just you wouldn't think they'd be in top of the bubble, pushing it through. First season going into the RLCS, and you can see this team is changing, and it is all centered around Virtuoso.
And that's just, like, again, it feels so good to see him doing so well. And for this team, obviously, Endpoint are doing well because of it, you know. And again, I'm still gonna say what I said as the caveat, but I'm excited for what this team has to go with in the future. For now, though, they get a third place position. I think a well-deserved third place position as well here in this Spring Series bracket. And we'll move on from there. Going to be a bit of a negative one, even though Dignitas did come in seconds. But this team, like, oh my God. I looked at this squad and I thought, mate, like, I looked at this bracket, I should say, and when I did my write-up for RLAfterShock.com, I was like, look, the only grand final we could see is Runner Vitality versus Dignitas. What I didn't account for is the amount of ring rust we would see from Dignitas. Like, it's clear to me that they didn't put much practice in after the RLCS. They just took time to enjoy their first place position and then just kind of left it at that. And it showed. It showed on day one especially, man, because, like, even though they got the victory against FC Barcelona, that was still an absolute fucking slogfest for Dignitas, you know. And even though the victories were very high scoring goals for the Dignitas side, with nothing being scored for FCB, the Canyons result really contextualizes how much of a slog it was for Dignitas, because they looked god-awful on day one. Truly, truly god-awful. And even by day two, I don't think they recovered to the Dignitas that we saw in the RLCS playoffs. You know, like, that was definitely not the same team throughout the entire course of the Spring Series.
No, you can definitely see, like, that. Day one, you're right, just god-awful. Day two, they were able to build it up, and they got to a very strong point, but it was still just not to that top level that they had already put down. And this comes back during the RLCS, where Dig put out the comms videos, and you can see there is a clear problem on that team between Astral and eekso. And this is one of the things that has sparked a major rumor that Dig is going with a roster change. And a lot of people would probably think this is bonkers, but it feels as if Astral's the one that has to go, because he is, in comms anyway, the biggest problem for that team, being very negative, getting the team down. It's not, helping, not being positive, which is massive for morale, isn't it, Jay? Where you've got to try pick the team up, and I think this team has the possibility of win worlds, of course, but if they keep going at the rate they are right now, it's not going to happen. Either Dig makes a roster change, or they get in, lifestyle coaches and all of that to really pull this team together and get them to work. But I mean, considering everyone is shut indoors at the moment, and that's going to be the case for, a fair bit of time before anyone can really go traveling and that, considering they're all from different countries, the lifestyle coach option isn't really there, is it? And Dig wants this when they've now got this team that is possibly at the brink of winning a Worlds. They're going to want results soon because they don't want to fizzle out. And this is scary to me that you can have a team that, by all accounts, is top 2 in Europe. I mean, after this weekend, the second best team in Europe, and they're not good enough. They could do better. You know they can do better. But together, it feels like we're just on the verge of them fucking exploding.
Absolutely. And I haven't seen these common videos, so I can't talk from that perspective of, the team mentality right now. But like, again, just seeing how the difference comparing RLCS to this is just like, mate, what happened here? Like, all the stuff we talked about as well, with the way that, we're like, Dignitas have accessed a new level. Oh my God, they've broken through their skill ceiling. They've gone to a different style of Rocket League that just is so impressive and so good. And it's like, well, now none of that is to be seen. They're not even a shadow of that level of performance. They are absolutely not. And that's the problem here. That's the problem. I think the Dignitas have just fallen so far from grace, and it feels like everything that we're saying from the Dignitas camp from the last tournament is actually could be applied to Vitality in this tournament here. Like, that's the curious part about it. And again, more details coming up. But here's the scary thing, I think, for a lot of teams in the tournament and in this European scene, I should say. Dignitas still made grand finals even on this lower level form. Like, right now, we are setting ourselves up for a ridiculous rivalry, between Dignitas and Red Vitality. And if they keep that top formation for Dignitas, like Vitality, as you mentioned earlier, this could be the El Clasico of fucking Europe.
It definitely can, considering that, the Vitality roster is, the Dig roster started off naturally from Gale Force, and they all split up. Vitality completely basis, starting with Patchy, Fairy Peak, and Freaky, and that's all sort of the only remnants of that is Fairy Peak. But as soon as they got on in K-Dop and then, Scrub, you could see this team was formulating towards that French powerhouse, and they are a powerhouse right now. It took them a while to get Alpha involved, but when you look on Dig on the opposite end, they've got all the pieces together, but they can't get those pieces to fit. It is super odd, and it all comes down to player personalities, and that's, like we said, one thing that is so hard to fix because you're having to change your players as individuals, and naturally it's hard to see that in yourself. You need someone else to look that on in, and relatively speaking, that's not a coach's job to do. That's not the coach's job to change you as a person to become the best human you can be, because that is what they need right now. You can see Panda is frustrated at this, that he's the captain of this team and it's a team that could win Worlds, and he's got Astral on one side acting like a fucking annoying little 8-year-old, and then you've got Yukio feeling almost like the little feeling like the bigger brother who is taking that bait each and every time, and they're just going off on each other, and you're like, boys, if you can work together, you could win everything, but you can't get over that.
It's another FC Barcelona, isn't it?
It is. It feels like the start of that fall.
Yeah, and we've already seen where that goes for FCB. It's not a fun little time. And as you also got to consider another angle from this as well. Every time Yukio has been a part of a roster move, he has dropped off the edge of a cliff when it comes to his form, and I think it's a case of, he's not very good at adapting on the fly. And if they have to swap Astral, Dignitas are going to dip in form. Like, I'm calling it right now. If they decide that they're going to have to get rid of a player, then they're not going to be top 2 in Europe anymore. And that's the key thing to that's what makes this move and what makes any sort of roster move for Dignitas so difficult, because Yukio, unless you want to remove Yukio, in which case, okay, you would avoid that and Yukio would be in the slums for the next fucking season. But, with for Dignitas, what could you lose in that particular respect? Will Astral become still be a toxic element to the new third, or is that still going to be, or will those issues subside, or will they fade away with a new player? Is it just a compatibility issue between those two players? There's so much to consider with this sort of thing, and it's like for Dignitas, it's a lose-lose situation either way.
Yeah, so when you look at that transfer, because I see this seriously as like that complexity issue of this team is just going to fucking implode. If you look at getting rid of, let's say, Astral, you got rid of the best player on your team. That is fucking harsh. Who do you replace him with? Because Dignitas has got itself into such a good state where it knows like this is the right formula to win. It's just how they execute that formula. Who do you replace it with? The only free agents right now that they could possibly take, I'm not including Flakes in this because I don't see that roster move happening. Like, why on earth would Dignitas take a player that is clearly just toxic? Like, you don't want to pick him on up. Like, it's already been proven. You have to pick from players that are down in the RORS, bubble players, like let's just say Joreuz right there, that could fill that spot, but they don't have that same level of experience. You've tried that already and it didn't work with Astral. You're in that current state right now. You've got to somehow take that risk, and that is scary. Okay, we get rid of Eekso. He's, part of the problem, naturally. He's biting back at Astral. We can try and fix on the Astral. We need to go for a lad that, is very headstrong and can be able to deliver. He's an all-rounder on the pitch. Okay, what are your options right now? Well, the best options, ideally, looking at it, is you've got to go and pay the buyouts for either Fruity or Speed. And they're going to be big fucking buyouts.
Yeah,
do
no.
Dig want to do that when, like you said, you're currently in the middle of this coronavirus epidemic. As soon as that's over, we're going to have an absolute crash in the economy. Dig aren't going to be wanting to fork out what I would assume anyway is probably somewhere close to 100,000 easily for those players. That just does not seem right. So Dig are in the worst possible case right now. And I mean, if one of those players goes, I'm sure Eekso and both Astral would find easily homes in RLCS teams. Like, you got Singularity there that's just fucking licking their lips going, right, when you're making this move, we're swooping in, we're going for that, straight away, because why wouldn't they? The natural sort of case could be made even there from when you look at FCB. If Astral goes, FCB would probably be looking at, or Eekso could probably be looking at one of those as well. You've got Mousesports there. If Speed is really in that case where he doesn't think this is a team, like he's happy with the team, but he wants to get that world-winning team. Those are two players that could possibly be picked up for his side and do that. And Oxygen as well. We have to look at that. Who knows? Maybe with Oxygen picking up. Think of this right now. Astral over to Oxygen when you've got two lads that could, and to replace, well, it wouldn't even work there. Because who would, I'm just saying, maybe Chaussette goes across. Maybe they try and just mix things up for them because they've got Stale. Who knows? But it's just that point of, right now, it is just the worst case in the world because Dignitas has to make this move. But do Dignitas want to do it? And if they do, it's not certain that it's going to work. That is what is scary. Realistically, for me, Astral, getting rid of him is going to be your safest bet, it feels like, for your long term. But for the short term, you want to get rid of Eekso. What do you do that?
That's the problem,
hard. That is fucking hard. They get rid of, like I said, they get rid of Eekso on the short term. Yeah, they stay up next season. Not a problem. They might even be top 4. But in the long term, if they get rid of Eekso, that's a team that not next season, but the season after will be back to a world-winning status. Like, they can get that. But next season, they'll be struggling to stay top 6. That is a big oof.
Yeah, it will be a big oof, to say the least. I think we're on the verge of a big roster shuffle in Europe, and it all kind of depends
NA
on
as well. And
NA was a given. I mean, you should hear the Rettles rumors, dude.
Yeah.
Those are fucking insane. But like with with Dignitas, just back onto the topic with those guys, like I think it all rests. I think this roster shuffle rests on Dig and what they decide to do with Astral and with the Astral and Yukio situation. Because if they do decide to make a move, and if they can't get over their personal differences, and they do decide to take one of these players out, we could be seeing so many players, because there's so many potentials for moves. Like as you mentioned, Mousesports, if they're still truly considering Arju out, then they might pick up one of those two players. Oxygen clearly need to make a move, so they might pick up one of those players. Endpoint could see a way back out. They could get rid of relating. Well, I mean, they can't do that because obviously they've locked in for the for the next season. But like depending on specifics, I mean, you never know how that might work out. They might bring Nachital back in place of relating wave, and might find a way to stop someone else in on the Dignitas side, assuming Metzenaris doesn't want to, go with his trial run, and then you've got the prospect of SC Barcelona, who have also been shit. Like so much right now, and we are so close towards it. I feel like I think we're skating on thin ice.
There's going to be an explosion in the next few weeks with players going about, and just right now, I would not want to be Violent Panda. Violent Panda, we have to say as well, has picked himself back up to form mechanically, because he's always been good on the mental side of the game, but he's been improving very steadily mechanically. And it's interesting to see that purely because his role on his team is not to be a mechanical player. Like, he is purely just keep everything in order. So it's good to see him be able to do that, because that could be very vital for this upcoming move. And just again, Violent Panda, good fucking luck, because you've got the choice of absolute hell coming up.
Good luck managing your stress is what I'm going to say, right? Like, that's going to be tough as fuck. But for Dignitas, obviously, they did fall down in that second place position, getting swept out of the board by Renault Vitality, which, of course, leads us on to our champions. Quite the contrary compared to Dignitas in this bracket, because holy shit, like this was insane. Absolutely insane. And again, as I was mentioning earlier, the same stuff that we said about Dignitas prior after the RLCS and their playoffs, we could take all of that and apply it to Renault Vitality, because we saw some insane stuff. And for once, they actually unleashed Alpha. Now, I know that we're talking about how Alpha's been taking on a new role with this Renault Vitality lineup, and I was saying, look, I think they need to put him in more of a striker role. I need to give him a bit more presence on the pitch. Well, there you go. They unleashed him. They let him off his fucking lead, and he wrecked every single player he could find on his lonesome as well. Like, he, in that Endpoint series, I believe, had one of the most insane stat lines I think I've ever seen in a competitive Rocket League a tournament match. Like, it was insane. Absolutely ridiculous. I could not believe some of the numbers I was seeing posted up. I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was seeing in the server. I made a joke, obviously, on the Aftershock Twitter saying that he fucking made a deal with the devil to sacrifice Endpoint to become a god. That's basically what it felt like there, because my God, what a player Alpha is. Like, he is the Zywoo to Turbo Simple, right? Like, that's what he is. Like, that, and Vitality are doing so well because of it, because not only have they got Alpha popping off, the K-Dot Fairy Peak connection hasn't waned at all. Like, this team is so deadly and terrifying for anyone that wants to contest for championships.
So the biggest thing right now is Alpha is, like, previously compared to compared to RLCS, the biggest change here is Alpha's increase in goal participation. He was involved in 77% of the goals from the spring series. The only lad who could get higher than that was Speed, and that's just naturally Speed's role. The biggest difference there is just Alpha is putting way more shots on target. He's getting more assists than Speed. His whole role is just to be down and attack, and that's not saying he's not getting saves, because he's averaging out 1.65 saves per game. So maybe that's on the lower end of things, but that's purely because he is an attacking midfielder. He can come back to do saves because naturally you've got to, but it just feels like they have finally found Alpha's true place in this team, and that is phenomenal to see, to the point where I still see there is room for growth for Vitality. Of course there is, they're still learning, but I don't see any other team right now being able to rival them. Like, and it's in such a harsh case, because quite frankly, we said it, spring series in EU was shite. across the board. Like, skill level just was not there. Mainly because you had Dig not showing up on day one. You had Barcelona just not showing up altogether. And it'll be interesting to see that again. But right now, you're there going, I wish we had a Worlds, because I want to see, Vitality be able to take on G2. I want to actually see right now, most of all, Vitality versus NRG. I want to see that series after last Worlds, and just see what's going on. And it's all purely because EU's on a little bit of an explosion point with massive jumps, whereas NA, those top teams, I think are going to be safe. Like, when you look at both NRG and G2, they should be safe going forward. And I'd love to see what Vitality can do against them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I so wish we had a LAN right now, because to see Vitality in this form, and
I can't see
Dignitas, and especially on Dignitas, like, if they kept the form, like, given a different world, I think that they wouldn't have just left it be after the RLCS playoffs, and then would have gone into LAN back on form without having any ring rust whatsoever. And with the way that those two, the Dignitas and Vitality, would play, then we could be seeing a completely different world. In which case, I don't know what else. I just wish we could have seen what the outcome would have been, because, like, some of these teams you mentioned, Vitality looked fucking untouchable. Didn't lose a single series in this bracket, and furthermore, I don't think, with the exception of Mousesports, they ever got it down to a match point for the opposition side. Like, that was such a great performance from them, and I'm just impressed. I'm so impressed with the way that Vitality have held themselves together, and they are the best team. They are the best team in Europe at the very least. I mean, I'd make an argument for North America, but I haven't seen a lot of the North American matches, so I can't really say that for absolute certainty. But even so, like, man, what a showing! What a showing from Vitality.
Was indeed. And like I said, right now, I can't see a team beating Vitality with how they've even got more room to grow. It's just going to be incredible to see how they progress. And it's interesting as well, like, this difference of, like, they were trying to, I don't want to say pigeonhole Alpha into a role of being that man all about the pitch, but they threw that away for this spring series and let him just go loose, do what he wanted. So it shows that in this 1 month off, Vitality have been putting the work on it in and trying to just see what else is there. But at that same point, they can go back to that old strategy. Vitality are giving themselves versatility, which is going to make them such a strong team overall, because you've seen teams that are very one-sided, let's say Barcelona, where they can just get destroyed if a team is ready for it. And it'll be interesting, because that is just going to go all around to the growth of Vitality. The French domination era is upon us, and it's all because these lads are some of the hardest working individuals there are.
And that hard work has paid off big time, man. It has looked so impressive. And I'm just excited to see what the future holds for Vitality. Just wish we knew with the next tournament that was coming up, because, that would be fucking amazing to know where they're going to be placing on against next. I don't count Fusion, fuck that. But I'm looking forward to the next big major, because for Vitality especially, like, man, like, what could what else could we expect to see out of them? Like, are they going to grow even more? Will this be a real, like, watershed moment for them? Like, are they going to continue to hold their own?
They've still got one more step. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've still got. More room to grow. I think every team does, to be honest. So, I'm just curious to see where that next step will go and where they'll grow towards. Because I'm excited, man. Like, it's a good time to be a European fan if you love the top end tier of what European Rocket League has to work with. So there you go. That wraps up the spring series, and that wraps up the show as well, Bacon. There a lot to unpack, obviously a bit of a long one, but certainly one that's worth it after the spring series results. I think we're going to fit in a good 3 hours to the show, Yeah,
it's been a long show. We were not expecting this today, were we? No.
I mean, I was, but Let that be what it was. Considering as well that this is the first thing I've done today, I literally got up before we started the show.
When I said a hard out at 5 and you went, yeah, let's start for 12, I was like, maybe you just want to start early, he's got some work in the evening. No, you were planning on this, weren't you?
No, I absolutely was. Like, if we started recording at our regular time, we would have got it down fucking very, very low. So don't worry. I made a plan for this.
Okay.
And certainly there was a good reason for that because, it's a very long one, a lot of stuff to break down, and a lot of interesting stuff to come forward in the rest of the Rocket League space for the off-season. Again, I am really hoping that we get the next tournament from Psyonix soon because, it would be much appreciated to know where we're going down this route and then see what we have to look forward to.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, it can't come sooner. As we said, there's nothing... Whilst RL Fusion is official from Psyonix or, sanctioned as such, it's not an actual Psyonix event. And we have never been in this sort of... we have been in this case a couple of times before, but it was never, in such a world crisis where there is just so much free time. Where they've been changing to these online events, this needed to happen. I was honestly in the mindset of, they'll announce something the next plans during the European spring series, because why would you leave it any later for a game that is now 4 years in its esports, and you're getting to a point where you've got no idea what's coming down the line as a fan? That's scary, and as we know, that's the same case for the players, for the org. So Psyonix, please just get something going.
Indeed. So we will wait until that announcement comes down. For the time being, though, we're going to end off on the show. It has been very, very fun as of this week. Again, a lot of good shit coming up and a lot of good interesting times, I feel like, coming through. So, that's going to conclude episode 74 of the show and going to conclude the spring series as well. Hopefully it has been as exciting for you as it has been for us in terms of the Rocket League scene. And of course, I'll plug the regular shit, of course, join the Discord. Show notes and video descriptions of every single episode of the podcast. Go click that link, follow us, join our community, send us mailbag questions, get involved in the pick and prediction games, which I think we're going to get booted up as well for... Actually, no, wait, there's nothing else coming up, is it? Fuck, I'm being an idiot. Ignore that. There's a pick and prediction game. No, fuck that. Absolutely not. No, definitely not.
We wouldn't do that to Dex. Come on, that's just that's way too much work for that lad.
No. I wouldn't do that to him. But I think he's going to organise some more gaming nights. Obviously, we've all got Valorant as well. So if you've got a Valorant key, I'm looking to try to set up some good stuff when I get my PC repaired. Because right now I'm running everything off a fucking laptop because this stupid piece of shit is crapped out on me. And only 4 months into working, by the way, so let that sink in. Be sure to join the Discord. Got a lot of interesting shit going on. We're always discussing stuff out there. It's a fun time to be a gamer and a fun time to be a Rocket League fan in our Discord, so go ahead and join us for that. As well as that, the Twitter at RLAfterShock to go ahead and keep up to date with all the news and everything going on with Rocket League. Twitch.tv/RLAfterShock, where you should be able to stream the shows live. We were doing our viewing parties, Bacon, but you seem to have fucking fallen behind on that. You haven't done any as of
busy life with work and then trying to do other stuff.
Yeah, but you had the weekend to do stuff like that. Whatever. Anyway, hopefully we'll bring those back soon, but the Twitch channel should be there as soon as we get ready to do more of the live editions of the podcast, but unfortunately not quite as easy with the latest situations being going on. With the schedules and such. Of course, though, if you want to follow the podcast in its regular recorded form, it's available on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and most other audio distribution platforms. You can go to anchor.fm/RLAftershock to find your favorite platform or request your favorite way to listen, or just search RL Aftershock in your podcast or audio distributors search engine. So, with that being said, that's going to conclude the podcast. I'm in the Eternal Jake. This has been Digital Bacon. Any final words from you, my friend, before we head off?
Yep, with currently nothing on the landscape up, I am going to set up a new tournament. I'm going to call it RL. Let's go with.
Do you want to run that
RL
joke back?
Helix? No. I'm going up with RL Helix. I have found £6.51 in my back pocket. The first round is going to be drop shot. Second will be hockey. Third going to be let's go with some basketball. Fourth will be boomer mode, and then fifth will be moonball. And that's just for the qualifiers. When we get through to the main event, it will be all 4v4. So make sure you have a team of 6 players ready for for that. And yeah, we'll put sign-ups later this week. The way you sign up is go on the official Rocket League Discord, and then you've got to let's go with Scheist on this one with the hashtag in your name and put RL Helix alongside your teammates as well as, let's say, your favorite food. Why not? And that's how you officially sign up for this.
Please don't actually do that.
Please don't
actually do that. Right, we're going to get off your screens, out of your ears, and back here next week for even more of the Aftershock.